Story 1. Supported my husband, who hasn't worked a day since the past 8 years. But my in-laws never liked me. On the anniversary party I paid for, Mill gave a speech about how I ruin her son's life. So, my husband, Landon, 36M, and I, 34F, have been together for 12 years and married for 9. We have pretty much been soulmates and get along for the most part, except for when it comes to my in-laws. I don't know why, but my in-laws have never really liked me or accepted me as a part of the family. I honestly did not know what the real reason was until a couple of days ago, when they finally announced it at their anniversary party. Anyway, before I get into that, I need to give you guys some context about the kind of situation that I'm in. Landon is what one would call a house husband. When we got married, 1 year into our marriage, we realized that I was making a lot more money than he was, since I was working at my dad's electrical appliance business and training to take over once he retired. He said that he wanted to be at home and take care of household chores because he really hated his job and thought that it was a waste of time. I thought it was a pretty big decision to make, but as long as he was fine with it, I was fine with it as well. It was a mutual decision, and we've been sticking to that for the past 8 years. My father retired almost 6 years ago, and since then I have been the CEO of our company. I don't mean to brag, but I make a lot of money. My husband is happy and so am I. I don't really understand why anybody else would have a problem with it, but for some reason my in-laws had just assumed that he was the primary breadwinner of the family. To be fair, we had never really told them about our situation, but honestly, that was just because my in-laws are very old school and orthodox. Landon knew for a fact that if they got to know that he was a house husband and was not actually working, they would completely lose their mind, and he said that he did not want to go through the trouble of telling them the truth. So we had never told them about the situation, and they didn't actually know that he had not been working for the past 8 years. Whenever we met them, we would pretend that he was still working at his previous company but did not get into the details of it and would change the topic as soon as it came up, because we did not think it was important enough to be discussed that way. We were able to avoid a lot of awkward discussions and unnecessary conversations, and we were happy that way. On top of that, they already did not like me by the time Landon and I got married, so I did not want to make things worse for myself by telling them the truth about our marriage, that he stayed at home and took care of our household, and I was the one who worked and brought home the money. Now, a lot of you might be wondering why I still tried to get along with them and kept in touch with them, even though it was very clear that they didn't like me. So, even Landon has apologized to me for all of this several times, but there was just no way that we could just cut them out of our lives permanently. That's because my mother-in-law, Sheila, is a cancer survivor and has had to battle 2 types of cancer in the past 8 years. First, she was diagnosed with skin cancer, and then a couple of years later with brain cancer. She's a very lucky lady who has survived both and is in remission as of now. But after she has been through so much, we just couldn't find it in ourselves to cut them off. And if that was not bad enough, my father-in-law, Bob, has had 2 heart attacks in the past 4 years. So I guess you guys can understand the position that we were in and why we could not cut them out of our life in spite of their weird behavior around me. I wouldn't say that they were rude or nasty to me like some other in-laws are, but whenever I was around they were always very cold with me, and it was something that everybody in the room could pick up on. Even when I was dating Landon and I had met their family for the first time, they had been a bit off. But after we got married, they got even more distant and cold. However, given their condition, I decided to just suck it up and deal with it, because I did not want to be the person who told Landon to cut his parents out of his life just because they were a bit weird around me. And he was extremely thankful to me for it. The real reason I felt really bad for them was because I had lost my mother to cancer a couple of years before I met Landon, so I did not want to make matters worse for them, and I would try to even help them financially whenever I could. Both of them are retired, so they would sometimes ask Landon to help them out with certain expenses that they needed to be covered. Landon did not exactly have any money, so I would be the one who wrote them a check, but I would always make it out to be from both Landon and I, because if it was just me then it would seem a bit suspicious, and we didn't want them to be able to figure out that Landon was not working in the past 8 years. Every event that they have had, every vacation that they have taken, and every fancy thing that they have ever done has been thanks to me. So I would think that they would be at least a little thankful, because even though according to them it was both Landon and I contributing to their finances, I still believe that if I was part of it then I deserved a bit of appreciation. But I never had any luck with them. Recently, I even organized their anniversary party for them to celebrate their 40th year of marriage. Of course, according to them it was both Landon and I who organized the entire thing, but I was still a part of it, so I thought that they would be thankful to me. However, at the party they decided to make a speech, and it was a particularly nasty one. And I think after that there's no going back to having a relationship with them. In retaliation, I cleared up certain things that I think were long overdue. Anyway, as soon as we had shown up at the party, Landon's parents had started acting weird almost immediately. I could not figure it out at the time, but when they were making the speech I realized that it was because of my new car. So, a couple of weeks ago I bought a fancy new luxury car for myself. Landon is still driving his old one because he doesn't really go out that much, and if the two of us need to show up anywhere we get around together in my car. But that day Landon had shown up at his parents' house in the afternoon, and I had to come by in the evening after work, so we had come separately and I had driven my own car there. And I guess that it rubbed Landon's parents the wrong way. When they were asked to make a speech for the anniversary, they said that they were happy that they were celebrating 40 years of being together, but they also wanted to take the moment to talk about something that had been bothering them. And then they turned to me and started saying that they really did not appreciate the fact that I was mooching off of their son for so long, and they wanted to put an end to this. For years they had not said anything about it because they thought that I would change, but it had been almost 9 years and was going to be a decade, but I had not changed my ways. Then they went on to talk about how I had bought a new car, and it was so shameless of me to do so on my husband's money while their son is still driving around an old car. They also said that it was not lost on them that their son dressed so modestly and I was always dressed up in expensive brands from head to toe, which they thought was a very brazen and unnecessary display of my dependence on my husband. They wanted to address this issue publicly because they had stayed quiet for long enough, and now they wanted to make me realize that I was being a gold digger. After that speech I completely lost it, because all the guests were staring at me. And being cold to me was one thing, but humiliating me like that publicly was just not acceptable. So I decided to take over the event. Then I went on to make my own speech where I cleared everything up. And since then Landon's parents have been constantly bothering us because they think that we made a fool out of them. For the record, Landon himself does not have a problem with whatever I said, because he knows that it's the truth and it is going to come out at some point eventually. Anyway, once they were done with their speech, I got up on stage and they tried to get me to shut up by saying that it was not necessary for me to have a debate with them at that point. But I told them that not only was it necessary, it was very important for them to hear me out as well. So I went on to clarify that for the past 8 years Landon had not had to work a day in his life, and it was all thanks to me. I told everybody in the family about the secret that we had been keeping from them for so long and said that Landon was actually a house husband and I was the breadwinner of the family. So, contrary to what my in-laws believed, I was actually financing them all along, and they had been ungrateful enough to make a horrible speech about me in public. I also told them that Landon wore modest clothes and drove an old car around by his choice, but nobody could ever accuse me of depriving him of anything or making him feel small like they had been trying to do to me. I said that maybe not telling them the truth about our financial situation was my mistake, but that probably would not have changed the situation, and they still would have found a reason to hate me. Because for the past 8 years, every time that we have helped them out with money, it had always made it very clear that I had an equal part to play in supporting them. But even then they were never grateful for it. We had lied to them, but it was for our own peace of mind, because even before we had started lying to them about this situation they had still disliked me for no reason. And since the truth was finally out, I did not see any reason for me to stick around and get insulted by them anymore. Landon and I left, but before we left we got a good look at everybody's faces in the crowd of people that were there, and all the guests were disgusted by what was going on. Anyway, after we got home it felt like a burden had been lifted off our shoulders, since we had been keeping up with these lies for the past 8 years, and now that it was finally out we had nothing to worry about anymore. But the next day, Landon's parents called him up and told him that what had happened at the party was incredibly wrong. We had thought that they were going to apologize or at least attempt to sort things out with us, but they said that we were horrible people for lying to them for so long, and even worse, I was a terrible person for making that humiliating speech against them and making them seem like bad parents. First things first, I do not think that I made them seem like anything. I just held up a mirror to them. I might just agree with the fact that we were wrong for lying, but honestly, what other choice did we have? If we hadn't lied to them, they probably would have made life a nightmare for us by constantly bothering us about our situation and harassing Landon to get a job. He wouldn't even be able to cut them off because of their illnesses, and we would have gone crazy with guilt if we did that. So I can still justify the lying bit because they had already disliked me from the beginning, even before we did anything. But I can't understand why they always hated me, even though they knew that I was also contributing to helping them out financially when they needed it, because all the checks that we made out to them always had my name on it along with his. When Landon demanded an answer for that, they had nothing to say, and they tried to switch the topic back to how we had lied to them and fooled them for years. And then with that speech we had made everybody that they knew hate them almost instantly. But Landon insisted that they tell us why they hated me so much, because at this point we needed to know. Because they also knew that I had played a huge role in organizing the anniversary party for them and had spoken to all the vendors and everything. They had believed that we were splitting the cost of organizing it, and they could actually see for themselves that I had been speaking to all the vendors. But even then it was not enough for them. So, after everything that I had done for his family, his parents still wanted to hate me. He was saying all these things, but then I heard screaming from the other end, and Landon's mother was being so loud that I could actually hear her even though I was sitting a few inches away from him. She said that we had been gaslighting them for years and she was never going to forgive that, and now because of my speech everybody in their life hated them, and she was just disgusted with both of us. Then she hung up, and they have been texting him a lot saying that we need to tell them how much money they owe us because they don't want to take any sort of favors from me. They wanted to return everything that I have helped them out with so far, even if it meant that they would have to sell everything that they had because they had their son helping them. But if it was me, they did not want it because I was a liar. So now I'm feeling weird about all of this, and I feel really guilty. I feel bad for lying to my in-laws about my husband having a job and for making a speech at their anniversary party to expose the truth. Update 1. Hi, it has been 1 week since the party, and Landon and I decided that it would be in our best interest to just block my in-laws and move on with this, since clearly there's no talking to them. There is just no reasoning with them because they just want an excuse to hate me and that's it. They always disliked me. I'll still agree that we probably should not have lied to them for so long, because that definitely made them feel very betrayed. But I don't think telling them the truth would have made them like me any better. So far we had kept in touch with them as I felt bad that they had to deal with so many illnesses, and I didn't want to take their son away from them. But now Landon has had it with them. He has been apologizing to me every day since the day of the party, and he thinks that it's all his fault. But I told him that he is not responsible for the actions of his parents. A lot of his relatives have also reached out to me to let me know that they stand with me, and that what my in-laws did at the party was just not acceptable. Most people have cut my in-laws off, and I wouldn't say that I feel good about it because they're just a lonely old couple, to be honest. So I'm not going to encourage it because I still have a heart. No matter how I've been treated, I can't wish ill upon anybody. But I'm not going to go out of my way to discourage that either. It's people's personal choice whether they want to cut them off or not, and I'm not going to interfere with that. Anyway, all of this has really frazzled my nerves, and I just want to stop thinking about this and move on with my life. Landon and I are planning on taking a short trip to get away from all of this on the weekend. At least one good thing is going to come out of all this drama. We are going to be able to use this as an excuse to get away from everything and just have some time to ourselves and process all of this. Update 2. So, a couple of days ago Landon and I had blocked Bob and Sheila everywhere. We left no stone unturned to make sure that they would not be able to contact us. Yesterday we left in the morning so that we could take a short trip to the beach, but I just received a phone call from the alarm company saying that they had detected somebody trying to break into our house that had set the alarms off. And I was instantly willing to bet my entire bank balance that it had to be Bob and Sheila. So, as soon as I received that phone call, I logged into the security cameras to review the footage, and of course it was them. We noticed that they had been standing outside our door and ringing the bell for almost 15 minutes before they tried to get in other ways, and they managed to do so by doing the craziest thing. They broke the glass bay window in our living room to get in by grabbing bricks that they had brought along with them, probably for this particular purpose. And I made a note of that so that I would be able to sue them later on and get my money back, because it was a pretty expensive door to get installed in the first place. It was also very brave of them to try that given their age and circumstances. Anyway, after that they got in, and they hadn't yet left when I received the phone call from the alarm company. And while I was reviewing the footage, I realized that they must still be in our house. So I decided to call the cops immediately, and I also informed my neighbor, who also is a very good friend of mine, about what was going on. And within half an hour, the cops had arrived and escorted them off our property. And now the DA gets to decide whether they will be charged with this or not. They probably won't be because they are really old and they can just act like they're frail or something. But it really pissed me off that they did something like this. For now, I had contacted my neighbor, and she was able to manage to get somebody to install a makeshift glass to replace the one that they had shattered. But it's much cheaper than the previous one, so we have to get that replaced with something better as soon as we get back home. And mark my words, I'm going to make sure that Bob and Sheila cough up the money that they have cost us. And not just that, I'm going to make sure that I demand every single penny back from them, because the way that they are acting is really pissing me off. But Landon and I wanted to spend the weekend together, and we had already made up our minds that nothing was going to stop us. Not even their antics to bother us. So we are still spending the weekend here on the beach, and we will deal with everything later once we get back to the city. Update 3. Just as I had expected, the DA dropped the charges against them given their age. Landon told me that his dad is really good friends with somebody who is related to the DA, so this might have had something to do with that as well, which seems really unfair, but I'm not going to pursue it anymore since it's not really worth it. And also, once we did a full sweep of the house, we realized that nothing was missing, so it's not like they stole or damaged anything inside the house. To be very frank, I didn't even know what they were doing inside, but I am still going to send them a legal notice and have them pay me back the money for replacing the glass door. I've already sent them an email saying that they need to return all the money that they owed us, since they had made such bold claims themselves. They had been demanding figures from us earlier, saying that they wanted to know how much they owed me since they were not willing to take a single dollar from me. Now they could finally return the favor and pay me back everything that I had spent on them. So far we calculated it, and over the past 9 years they had accumulated almost around $80,000. And now they were indebted to me until they were able to return the full amount to me. I might have felt bad about it, but after the break-in incident I really don't think that they deserve my pity. Even Landon has said that I'm doing the right thing, and I think I'm doing it pretty late. So far I've always tried my best to be kind and generous, but some people just don't deserve it. I have spoken to my lawyer, and he has told me that according to the footage it's pretty clear that they were the ones who caused damage to the glass door, so they are going to have to pay the money to replace it. He's not very sure if we can get the rest of the money back though, since there was no contract or legal document that would prove anything, so that might be a bit difficult. But for that I'm just going to keep emailing them until they finally agree to give it back to me, or at least until one of us gets tired, and preferably it is going to be them. To be really honest, I don't need the money as badly as they do. But after all the humiliation that I have had to face, I don't think it's worth it to just let it go. Update 4. Hi. So a couple of weeks ago we sent a legal notice to my in-laws and demanded that they cough up the money that they owed us for replacing the glass door in our house. Honestly, it was a very easy process, and within 2 weeks we were able to come to a settlement, and they paid us the amount in full. The worst part was not actually that. It was having to see them. After that, the interaction that took place when we met with our lawyers, we had to maintain decorum, so they didn't exactly get to behave like crazy old people. But once we were out in the parking lot, it was anybody's guess. I had figured that they wouldn't have anything to say to us anymore, and we were about to go home. Landon and I had driven there in my car, that new one, and obviously I should have guessed that they had a huge problem with it and just automatically that I was trying to rub my wealth in their faces. Sheila came right up to me while Bob stood behind her, and she spat on the ground beside my feet, told me to get out of there as quickly as I could because otherwise I would regret it, and I was caught totally off guard. And then she said that this is exactly what I deserved for humiliating them at their party. Because now nobody wants anything to do with them and it's all my fault. When Landon came to my side and said that this was unacceptable behavior, she told him that she didn't even want to speak to him because he was just as nasty as I was, and he was a humongous loser who had no money of his own, so he had no right to say anything. And then I don't know what got into Bob, but he climbed onto the hood of the car and then punched the windshield so hard that not only did he injure himself but he also managed to crack the windshield a bit. Sheila thought she was being very cool, and then she said that I did not need to worry because she would also send me the money to get that fixed along with what she already owed me. Both Landon and I were dumbstruck and had no idea how to react to that. We would have called the cops, but they were already let off with just a slap on the wrist once, and we were pretty sure that it was going to happen again. Anyway, we decided to ignore that because we were going to get the money back anyway, so nothing mattered to us. All we wanted to do was move on, and we don't really care if they get punished or not because after this they are going to be on their own, and I think that's punishment enough for them. We don't need to get the law involved anymore since we are just done, and we don't want to get into the hassle of all of that. So that's what happened. Now we are just looking forward to living a peaceful life and have nothing to do with either Bob or Sheila anymore, because they are just not worth our time or energy. Earlier I had said that I did not want them to be completely isolated from the rest of the family, but I think now I've changed my mind. Landon has contacted most of his relatives and told them about everything that has happened, and he has said that from this point forward, if they are invited to any family get-togethers or other holidays, the two of us will not be attending. And most people have responded positively to that. Nobody has anything nice to say about them and said that they want nothing to do with these people, especially after what they found out about them from us. The line has been drawn, and it's not going to be crossed anymore. Update 5. Hey, so it has almost been 1 year since I posted here, and something happened yesterday that I wanted to share with you guys. I am pregnant. We found out about it a couple of weeks ago, and yesterday we decided to throw a party for our pregnancy announcement and invited a bunch of people. We were not exactly planning on this, but it just happened, and I was kind of skeptical about it because I'm almost in my late 30s now, but it just felt right. So we are going on with the pregnancy, and everyone's really happy about it. So yesterday, after almost a year of no contact, guess who showed up at our party uninvited? Yep, it was Sheila and Bob. And when they showed up at our door almost 1 hour before the party was supposed to begin, I did something that I had been waiting to do right from the beginning. When Sheila said that she wanted to put everything in the past and start afresh now that she was going to be a grandmother, I spat on the ground and told her to get lost, just like she had done to me 1 year back, and shut the door with a slam. They kept ringing the doorbell for a couple of minutes more after that, but then I opened the door and I told them that if they did not leave I would call the cops once again, and this time I would not let them off so easily. So they demanded to speak to Landon, but he came out and told them that since he was not an earning member of the family and was such a humongous loser, he did not feel that he was worthy enough to have any sort of discussion with them, and it would be better for them if they left. After that, they had been humiliated enough, so they left. We are really happy because now I can demand a restraining order against them. Because now that I'm pregnant, I don't want to risk anything. I don't want them in my life ever again, and I'm going to make sure of it. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. My stepmom tried to kill me with peanut butter and seduce my fiancé. Now my dad's siding with her, so I cut them both off from my life. I 28F, never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am. My life has turned into a soap opera, and I need advice on how to handle this mess. Some background. My mom passed away when I was 12 from breast cancer. It was a devastating time for my dad and me. We were incredibly close, and he became my rock during those difficult years. We'd spend weekends working on puzzles, watching old movies, and just being there for each other. It wasn't perfect, but we were managing. Then, when I was 16, my dad started dating again. At first, I was happy for him. He deserved to find love again, and I wanted him to be happy. That's when Diane, 45F, entered our lives. She seemed nice at first, always complimenting my dad, bringing little gifts for me, and trying to include me in their outings. I was cautiously optimistic, but things started to change after they got married a year later. Diane's true colors began to show. She'd make subtle comments about my appearance, comparing herself to me in ways that made me uncomfortable. Once, when I wore a new dress to a family dinner, she disappeared upstairs and came back wearing something nearly identical, but more revealing. She'd laugh it off as a fun coincidence, but the look in her eyes told a different story. As I got older, things got weirder. Diane would accidentally walk in on me changing or make inappropriate comments about my body. She tried to give me advice about boys, but it always felt off somehow. I started spending more time away from home, throwing myself into school and extracurricular activities. My dad seemed oblivious to it all. Whenever I tried to talk to him about Diane's behavior, he'd brush it off as women being women or tell me I was being too sensitive. Created a rift between us that I didn't know how to bridge. Fast forward to 3 years ago when I met Jake, 30M. We hit it off immediately at a mutual friend's barbecue. He was funny, kind, and genuinely interested in my thoughts and feelings. After years of feeling like I was walking on eggshells at home, Jake's presence in my life was like a breath of fresh air. Our relationship progressed quickly. Within 6 months, we were talking about moving in together. That's when Diane's behavior took another turn. She'd make excuses to touch Jake, laughing too hard at his jokes and finding reasons to be around him. Once, she accidentally spilled wine on his shirt at a family dinner and insisted on helping him clean up, following him to the bathroom. Jake noticed too and started avoiding her. He'd make sure we only visited when my dad was home, and he'd never be alone in a room with Diane. It made family gatherings tense, but I was grateful he understood without me having to explain everything. Last year, Jake proposed during a weekend trip to the beach. It was perfect, just the two of us, the sound of the waves, and a beautiful sunset. I was over the moon, but when we announced it to my family, I saw something flash in Diane's eyes. It wasn't happiness or excitement. It was something else, something that made my skin crawl. From that moment on, Diane's behavior became even more erratic. She called Jake at odd hours, claiming she needed help with something around the house. She'd show up at his workplace, saying she was in the neighborhood. Jake always handled it gracefully, but I could see it was wearing on him. Now here's where things get crazy. Last month, we had a family dinner to celebrate my dad's birthday. It was tense from the start. Diane kept making passive-aggressive comments about the wedding planning, implying that I was being a bridezilla, even though we'd barely started discussing details. After dinner, Diane insisted on ordering dessert, even though we were all full. She disappeared to talk to the waiter and came back with some fancy chocolate cake that looked amazing. I took a bite and immediately knew something was wrong. My throat started closing up, and I couldn't breathe. See, I have a severe peanut allergy. I developed it when I was a teenager, shortly after my mom passed away. It was a difficult time, adjusting to life without mom and suddenly having to be hypervigilant about what I ate. Everyone in my family knows this. I always carry an EpiPen, but in the chaos, I couldn't find it. Jake rushed me to the ER while my dad tried to figure out what happened. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed it was a peanut reaction. When my dad confronted Diane, she swore she had no idea there was peanut butter in the cake. But here's the kicker. Jake overheard her talking to the waiter when she ordered. He swears she specifically asked for the peanut butter chocolate cake and made sure it wasn't labeled. I was in the hospital for 2 days. During that time, Diane kept trying to visit me alone, but Jake wouldn't leave my side. On the second day, Jake went to grab coffee, and Diane cornered him in the hallway. She tried to kiss him, saying they could comfort each other while I was sick. Jake pushed her away and told me everything. When I confronted Diane, she denied everything. She cried and said Jake was lying, that he'd been coming on to her for months. She spun this whole story about how uncomfortable she'd been, but she didn't want to tell me because she knew how happy I was. It was lies, but she was convincing, so convincing that my dad believed her. He said I was being dramatic and disrespectful to my stepmom. He brought up times from my teenage years when I'd been moody or distant, using them as evidence that I'd always had a problem with Diane. It was like he'd completely forgotten the close relationship we'd had before she came into our lives. I was furious. I told them both that I was done. I wasn't going to stick around and let Diane try to kill me again or seduce my fiancé. My dad accused me of tearing the family apart with wild accusations. He said I was jealous of Diane and always had been. Here's where it gets even messier. My grandpa, Dad's father, passed away last year, leaving behind a sizable inheritance. My grandpa and I had always been close. He never quite warmed up to Diane, which caused some tension in the family, but before he died, he made it clear he wanted his estate split between my dad and me. Now my dad's threatening to cut me out of the will if I don't apologize to Diane and make things right. He says Grandpa would be disappointed in how I'm acting, but I know that's not true. Grandpa always encouraged me to stand up for myself. I'm at a loss. I love my dad, but I can't believe he's choosing Diane over me. Jake and I have moved out and are staying with his parents for now. They've been incredibly supportive, but I know it's not a long-term solution. My friends are split. Some think I'm overreacting, while others are telling me to press charges against Diane. My best friend, Sarah, has been my biggest supporter. She's never liked Diane and says she always got a weird vibe from her. I don't know what to do. Should I try to reason with my dad one more time? Should I just walk away from my family and the inheritance? Is there any way to prove what Diane did? I feel like I'm losing everything. My family, my home, and potentially a lot of money, but I refuse to put myself in danger or let Diane come between Jake and me. Any advice would be appreciated. Edit. Thank you all for the supportive comments and advice. To clarify a few things: 1. Yes, I'm sure about the peanut butter. The hospital confirmed it. 2. I've known Diane for 12 years, and she's always known about my allergy. 3. Jake and I are 100% sure about what we heard and saw. We're not mistaken or lying. 4. I'm looking into legal options, but it's complicated since it's my word against hers. 5. I'm not going to apologize or pretend everything's okay just for the inheritance. My life and relationship are worth more than that. I'll update when I have more information or if anything changes. Thanks again for the support. Update 1. It's been about 6 months since my last post, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. It really helped me stay strong during this nightmare. First, the good news: Jake and I got married. We had a small ceremony with just his family and my closest friends. It was nothing like the big wedding we'd originally planned, but it was perfect for us. We wrote our own vows, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. My best friend, Sarah, was my maid of honor, and Jake's brother was his best man. It was beautiful and drama-free, which is exactly what we needed. We're officially moved into our own place now, and it feels great to have our own space. It's a small apartment, but it's ours. We've been enjoying setting it up together, choosing furniture, and making it feel like home. It's been a healing process, creating a safe space that's just for us. Now for the not-so-good news. My relationship with my dad has completely fallen apart. After my last post, I tried one more time to talk to him. I laid out everything: the peanut incident, Diane's behavior toward Jake, and how hurt I was that he didn't believe me. I even brought up specific incidents from over the years, hoping it would jog his memory or make him see the pattern. He listened, but in the end, he still took Diane's side. He said I was jealous of her and making up stories to break them up. He brought up times from my teenage years when I'd been moody or difficult, using them as proof that I'd always had a problem with Diane. It was like he'd completely forgotten our close relationship before she came into our lives. The inheritance situation has gotten messy. My dad followed through on his threat and changed his will. He's now leaving everything to Diane, with the condition that she take care of me if I ever come to my senses. It's insulting and heartbreaking. I can't help but think about my grandpa and how disappointed he would be in this whole situation. Diane has been busy too. She's been telling everyone who will listen that I'm mentally unstable and making up lies about her. She's spun this whole story about how she's always tried to be a good stepmom, but I've rejected her at every turn. Some family friends have reached out, concerned about my behavior. It's frustrating, but I'm trying to stay above it all. I did take some of your advice and spoke to a lawyer. Unfortunately, without hard evidence, there's not much I can do legally about the peanut incident. The lawyer suggested focusing on protecting myself going forward instead of trying to prove what happened. We've set up security cameras at our new place, just in case. One bright spot in all this: my mom's sister, Aunt Sarah, reached out to me. We weren't close when I was younger. She lived across the country, and visits were rare, but she heard about what was happening and wanted to help. She's been amazing, offering emotional support and even helping Jake and I with a down payment for our new place. It's nice to have some family on my side. Aunt Sarah has been sharing stories about my mom that I'd never heard before. It's bittersweet. I love learning more about her, but it also makes me miss her terribly. I can't help but think about how different things might be if she were still here. Work has been a good distraction. I got a promotion last month, which has helped take my mind off the family drama. My boss has been understanding about everything, giving me flexibility when I need it. Jake's been incredibly supportive through all of this. His parents have practically adopted me, inviting me to all family events and treating me like their own daughter. I've had to make some tough decisions about boundaries. I've blocked Diane on all social media and my phone. I told my dad I won't be contacting him until he's ready to listen to me and acknowledge what happened. It hurts, but I know it's necessary for my mental health. There have been some tough moments. Holidays are hard, and I miss the relationship I used to have with my dad. But I'm learning to build new traditions with Jake and our friends. We hosted Thanksgiving this year, and it was actually really nice. Felt good to fill our home with laughter and love. I'm still struggling with feelings of guilt and anger. Some days I want to scream at my dad for choosing Diane over me. Other days I miss him so much it hurts. I'm trying to focus on the good things in my life. My marriage, my job, my true friends. Jake and I have been talking about starting a family of our own someday, and that gives me hope for the future. I don't know what the future holds. Part of me hopes my dad will come around eventually, but I'm not holding my breath. For now, I'm focusing on building my own life and family with Jake. Thank you all again for your support. It means more than you know. I'll update again if anything significant changes. Update 2. I can't believe I'm writing this, but there's been a major development in my situation. It's been about a year since my last update, and everything has changed. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from my dad. He was crying and asking to meet up. I was hesitant, but Jake encouraged me to hear him out. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop we used to go to when I was in high school. Walking in, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia. We used to come here after my weekend soccer games, sharing a slice of apple pie and talking about everything and nothing. When I saw my dad, I barely recognized him. He looked older, tired, like he'd aged years in just a few months. He broke down as soon as he saw me, apologizing over and over. Then he told me everything. It turns out Diane had been having an affair for months. Not just any affair. She was sleeping with my dad's best friend, Tom. Tom and my dad had been friends since college. He was my honorary uncle, always bringing me quirky souvenirs from his business trips. He was even at my mom's funeral, supporting us through that difficult time. My dad caught them together at our family's lake house. The same lake house where we scattered my mom's ashes. He'd gone up there to do some maintenance, thinking some manual labor might help clear his head. Instead, he walked in on Diane and Tom in bed together. When he confronted Diane, she broke down and confessed to everything, including what she did to me. She admitted to putting peanut butter in the cake, knowing full well about my allergy. She said she wanted to teach me a lesson for being disrespectful. She also confessed to trying to seduce Jake, saying she was jealous of our relationship. Apparently, this wasn't the first time Diane had done something like this. My dad found out she had similar patterns in her previous marriages, causing drama, pitting family members against each other, and always playing the victim. It was like a switch had flipped, and suddenly he could see all the manipulation for what it was. My dad was devastated. He apologized over and over for not believing me. He said he felt like a fool for falling for Diane's lies and manipulations. He talked about how, after my mom died, he was so afraid of being alone that he ignored red flags with Diane. He said he'd convinced himself that having someone, anyone, was better than being alone. Now he realized how much that decision had cost him. He's filed for divorce and is working with his lawyer to undo the changes to his will. He said he wants to honor Grandpa's wishes and make sure I get my share of the inheritance, regardless of what happens between us. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was relieved to be vindicated, but another part was angry that it took this long for my dad to see the truth. We talked for hours. He asked for a chance to rebuild our relationship, but I told him I needed time to process everything. As for Diane, she's moved out of my dad's house and in with Tom. Good riddance, I say. My dad mentioned she tried to claim half of his assets, including the inheritance from my grandpa, but his lawyer shut that down quickly. Apparently, the prenup they signed is going to come in handy. Jake has been my rock through all of this. He's supportive but also protective, reminding me that I don't owe my dad anything just because he finally realized the truth. We're taking things day by day. I'm still processing everything. It's a strange mix of emotions. Relief, anger, sadness, and a weird sense of closure. I'm glad the truth is out, but it doesn't erase the pain of the past year. I find myself thinking about my mom a lot, wondering what she would say about all of this. Aunt Sarah has been an incredible support through all of this. She's been helping me work through my feelings about Dad, sharing her own experiences with forgiveness and family reconciliation. It's not easy, but I'm grateful to have her guidance. For now, I'm focusing on my own life. Jake and I are talking about starting a family, and I'm up for another promotion at work. We're also thinking about buying a house, something that seemed impossible a year ago, with all the drama and uncertainty. I've had a few brief conversations with my dad since our initial meeting. They've been awkward and emotional, but I think we're both trying. He started seeing a therapist to work through his own issues, which I think is a positive step. I'm cautiously optimistic about rebuilding a relationship with my dad, but I'm not rushing into anything. We've agreed to take it slow, starting with occasional phone calls and maybe working up to short visits. It's strange. I feel like I'm getting to know him all over again. As for Tom and Diane, I've heard through the grapevine that they've already split up. Apparently, their relationship couldn't survive outside of the secrecy and drama. I can't say I'm surprised or that I have any sympathy for either of them. Jake and I are doing well. This whole ordeal has brought us closer together. We're stronger as a team, and I'm grateful every day for his unwavering support. We're planning a belated honeymoon for next month, a chance to relax and reconnect after all the stress of the past year. Work continues to be a positive outlet for me. I threw myself into my latest project, and it's paying off. My boss has hinted at a potential leadership role opening up in the near future. It's exciting to think about, and it's nice to have something positive to focus on. I've also been reconnecting with old friends who drifted away during the height of the drama with Diane. It's been healing to rebuild those relationships and to realize how much support I really have. Thank you all for your support throughout this crazy journey. I never imagined my life would take these turns, but I'm grateful for the lessons I've learned and the strength I've found in myself. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in a long time, I'm hopeful. I'm learning to trust my instincts, set healthy boundaries, and surround myself with people who truly care about me. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. I may post again if there are any major developments, but for now, I'm focusing on moving forward and building the life I want. Thanks for being there through it all. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Colleague, Zenny, pushes our relationship to the edge. I plan to confront her, but fear she will play the victim and gaslight me. I, 35F, work in a small department, think like 20 people, and only half speak English. I generally get along with everyone. Someone new joined the department a few months ago. At first, we got along very well, and then it was a sudden turn. I think it comes from us both joining a new gym at the same time. I've kept going, and there's a noticeable difference in my appearance now, and she didn't keep it up. I don't care that she stopped going to the gym. I go with my husband, 40M, and I'm more than happy going to gym classes alone. When she came with me, she was always nice. Sometimes asks for rides. I showed her how to use the weight machines as my husband is teaching me how to use them, and she wanted to learn. Everything was fine since she stopped going. The passive aggressiveness has started. Clearly she's annoyed at herself and is taking it out on me. Examples of the passive aggressiveness. Talking over me loudly every time I start to speak, and she only does this to me. If I do manage to get out a sentence, immediately changing the subject so my participation has ended. Literally looking annoyed and irritated that I even exist, to the point someone else asked her what the matter was because she looked so annoyed, and it was because she was sat next to me at lunch. Now the issue is, I'm a direct person. Not in an "oh, I have no filter, I'm honest regardless of people's feelings" kind of way. I'm direct as in I want to ask her if she has some kind of issue, what we can do to resolve it so we can move on and work as civil grown-ups. But I already know the personality type. She will gaslight me, play the victim, and I will be the villain. My plan is to just write it out. I plan to move departments in the new financial year to get more experience in a different area. And this was planned before she even joined our team. She isn't the reason I'm leaving, but I have slowly started to withdraw myself because being around her makes me feel so bad. Yesterday, we had a work party. They'd hired a property with a pool and rooms to stay over. I'd made the decision not to drink or stay over, as I know if I drink I'd end up confronting her. She'd probably cry, and the night would be ruined because of me. Instead, as I do some freelance work Sunday mornings, I told everyone I couldn't stay or drink as I had work, which is true, although if I wanted to, I could have rearranged it. I also left super early, which shocked a few people, and they didn't want me to go, but I didn't want to be around someone who makes me feel so unwelcome. I told them being around people drinking was making me want to drink, so I had to leave. I cried all the way home in the car. I ended up actually going out drinking with my husband, and another coworker was there who'd left early as her boyfriend is traveling for work for a few months. So it was their last night together, so we ended up drinking and talking. So I'm worried I will have hurt some of my colleagues' feelings when I used the excuse of not being able to drink and then went out drinking anyway. But I honestly had to get out of there. They're all very close and like this girl, and she's a very big personality, so I can't confide in anyone. I can just count down to leave. I have had mental health issues before where I've become paranoid and convinced everyone hates me. But this time I'm certain it's what's happening because it's only her. I don't think anyone else hates me, but I don't understand how no one else can see this. I just needed to rant this out. I know I've brought up I think it's the gym thing. Never have I asked her why she stopped going or even brought it up to her about it because I'd feel like I was embarrassing her, so it's like I'm banging on about it to her that she stopped, so I've not upset her in that sort of way either. Use this technique whenever she does something new. Just point it out in front of people. Did you mean to throw away my lunch? Do I need a bigger name tag for them? Haha. Hope you don't need new glasses. Oh no, you did undersir. How can we stop that from happening again? It's not about changing her. It's really about changing you. Being someone who is driven off from a party in tears is a you thing unless she was physically threatening you or being unsafe. Maybe you have family members who made you feel powerless or weak. This is a good time to break those reactions and get strong. Oop, well you hit the nail on the head with the family members. Yes, although I'm not wanting to unpack that right now, but I've never made the connection before. I think the hardest thing for me is I can be quite confrontational, not in a physical way, but in a way that I will just tell her, but she would love that because then she can be the victim. Everything you've said is also the advice my husband gave me at the moment. With having other duties, we're currently on different lunch times and spend very little time together, but I will stop withdrawing, and I will insert myself wherever I want and start lightly pointing it out. I am also feeling a little petty. I may just talk non-stop about how great the gym is and how great I'm looking, but I'm not sure if I should lower myself to that, although I'd probably enjoy it. I'm just glad I'll be in a completely different building to her in a few months if all goes to plan. Update 1. Hi everyone. 9 months ago I posted about dealing with a passive-aggressive coworker, and I was having a very bad time. I didn't get many comments. However, I have such a great update, and I feel great that I wanted to post again. After I made that post, things escalated. She also said she would be leaving in X amount of months to move to a new city, and her last day was around the same time as mine. Hers was the Friday, mine was the following Tuesday. She excluded me more than ever, always made sure to change the language to one I don't speak, but the rest of them do. What started to bother me was the people I was supposedly friends with were still treating me as normal but were passively doing nothing about this, so they'd all do things, go out for lunch during working hours and not invite me, but then would talk to me like everything was normal and supported me with the job. I just couldn't marry the two things up. I honestly thought I was going crazy. Anyway, when I only had a few days left, things had got really bad, and another coworker came to me and said she could see what was going on, that I wasn't crazy. Once the mask was lifted, I felt so much stronger. I had actually tried to confront her about if she had a problem with me, and she ran away from me saying there's no problem. Coward. I talked about having some leaving drinks because I was moving to another building. Her last day was the Friday, and our building had about 20 people in. Everyone was invited except maybe 3 of us. My feelings were very hurt. I ended up confiding in my boss, who told me loads of people had complained about her, and she wished I'd come to her earlier. She also told me that if she hadn't have said she was leaving, she would have been sacked for her toxic behavior. I told my boss I couldn't handle all the fake goodbyes on my last day, so she agreed I could do a half day and leave without telling anyone, which is exactly what I did. I got a message after, asking about meeting up and why I left without saying anything, so I told them the truth that I thought we were friends, and this is how they made me feel by ignoring what was happening. So we've sort of cleared the air, and we've seen each other at work events still, and it's fine, but we've said we'll meet up for a proper chat and clear everything properly. I was invited to a birthday party yesterday, and the toxic one was there, but I felt so strong. I think someone may have also said something to her because as soon as I walked in, she put her head down and looked a bit panicked. I wasn't going to cause drama at someone's birthday party, but I did outright ignore her. I was talking to someone and she tried to come and literally shout over me and I didn't even acknowledge or look at her and kept talking, and so did the person I was talking to, and she had to wait for us to finish to speak. At one point, she was playing beer pong. The ball was rolling towards me. I could have stopped it with my foot. Instead, I stepped over it and walked to get a drink, and she was having to chase after the ball. She tried to give me an annoyed look, but I glared at her, daring her to challenge me, and she put her head down and didn't dare. Petty but felt good. At the end of the night, my husband came to pick me up. He came in just to say hello to a few people. He's pretty well liked by everyone but didn't fancy a party full of women. She tried to run over to speak to him, and he glared at her and shook his head. She stopped dead in her tracks and scurried off. So today I feel great. I feel like I took back my power and showed her how small and weak she is without causing any drama. If she dared approach me, I'd have told her not to speak to me, but I'm glad it didn't come to that as I didn't want to cause drama at someone's birthday. I also gave up drinking a few months ago, and I'm so glad because if I got drunk, I'm not sure I would have left with so much dignity. I'm not sure anyone cares or will read this, but I feel amazing today, so wanted to share how good it feels to have my power back. Edit. I'm getting some comments about coworkers not being the same as friends. I know this. In my first post, I detailed everything. We were friends, we were hanging out together outside of work a lot. We also went to the gym together. She'd asked me for help with some of the weight machines, so I happily showed her. I comforted her when she was upset about some personal things. She actually stopped going to the gym and seemed to turn on me when I was getting compliments for my progress and clear body changes. Also, even if we were never friends and just co-workers the whole time, I'd still expect some mutual respect. Speak in a language everyone understands. English is everyone's first language, by the way. Don't talk over me, don't dismiss my ideas or try to put me down in meetings. There was clear unprofessionalism here. We are all grown-ups. There is still a level of civility and decency that we all should give in a professional environment. And actually, I made it sound like we work in an office because I wanted to make sure it stayed anonymous, but actually we work in a small school, so it's extra important we set an example for the kids on how we treat each other. Honestly, it felt amazing. If I'd have been confrontational and kicked off, I don't think I'd have felt as good as I do now. I didn't even have to say anything, and she cowered. It's not like she can take any actionable HR complaints about me. It was disrespectful toward me when he didn't even react to the names I was calling him. Stupid, right? That's the territory she's begun exploring. Don't give her a map. She actually left the company. We no longer work together, so I've got no worries about that. And the amount of complaints that my boss had about her, I don't think I'd have anything to worry about anyway. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if she's one of these women who crush on men easily. Developed a crush on your husband and created an imaginary competition with you. In her mind, she was losing the competition, so she got nasty. I also would not be surprised if she made a pass at your husband, and he rejected her. Oop. I never got vibes from her that she was into my husband, but I do think she was jealous of our relationship. We were a similar age. I'm 36. She's 34 and I was settled, and she talked a lot about wanting a relationship, but they never really spent any time together. I've actually had other women put themselves in competition with me about my husband before, and this didn't feel the same. I have to say, my poor husband just wants to be left alone. He can't think of anything worse than someone hassling him with a crush. If she'd have ever come on to him, he'd have told me, and he would have laughed in her face. I honestly think she's incredibly insecure. Doesn't like her body? I was making changes and have the life she wants, which is settled in a relationship, and I have stability, which is sad, and I would feel sorry for her if she hadn't been so awful to me. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Husband spends all his time glued to a screen. He ignores me, even when I try to talk to him. He told me to be grateful for the bare minimum. I want to quit my husband. I, 28F, and he, 27M, got married 9 months ago and have been together for 4 years. My husband is the type of person who stays to himself unless it's absolutely necessary or completely unavoidable. He's quiet and doesn't really talk to anyone unless he really enjoys their company. He's a gamer and prefers to spend his free time alone playing video games. We joke that he's a hermit because he hates leaving the house. If we do have to go anywhere, he gets really anxious after about an hour or two in public before he's begging me to go home. On the other hand, I love talking to people I care about and seeing them often. I like for my husband to be nearby or in the same room whenever possible, even if we're doing different things. I take every chance I have to get out of the house, but I don't really enjoy going places and doing things by myself. I try to find those little opportunities for connection, but it's been a struggle. Now the problem. 3 nights ago, we got into an argument that ended with me sobbing, begging him for more attention and affection, and my husband telling me, "I ask about your day and eat dinner with you sometimes. You should be grateful for that. What more do you want?" I'm not even sure how the argument started that night, but it wasn't the first time we've had this fight, and it's gotten progressively worse since the wedding. Whether it's his phone or computer, my husband is always glued to a screen, and he doesn't even bother to look up at me when I try to talk to him. It has gotten to the point where he will come home from work and sit outside in 95-plus-degree heat for hours to play on his phone without being disturbed. He'll only come inside for food or to use the bathroom until it's time for bed, and he'll do this all without ever saying a word to me. I've told him I'm lonely and that I miss his company. I've asked if he's lost interest in spending time with me. In the past, we tried to find solutions. Sometimes we'd follow through, and sometimes we didn't. Lately, his response is always, "I'm a boring person, and I'm just really tired from the heat." The summertime, we live in the southern U.S., and he works construction. But his comment about being grateful is a new low for us. And while emotionally I'm still starving for his attention, I don't know how to move past this. I know my husband idolizes his parents' marriage. Separate in content, they spend most of their time apart and only really come together for meals and sleeping and the occasional check-in or serious conversation here and there. While I adore my in-laws and can clearly see how in love they are, I do not want my own marriage to be like theirs at all, and my husband knows this. So why should I be grateful for the bare minimum, if I can even call it that? What the hell does that even mean? Anyway, does he think I don't deserve more? Am I not worth the effort to him? I'm angry. I'm hurt. I am so sad. I don't want to wear my wedding ring. I don't want to share a bed with him. I'm not even interested in talking to him anymore. I've come to the realization that I don't want to be with someone who makes loving me feel like a chore. My best friend thinks I should try talking to him again, tell him how I feel and try to work it out. I don't think it will get us anywhere, as there's no point in having the same conversation and hoping that it will suddenly change things. We've tried couples therapy before getting married. It did help us through some problems we were having, shout out to the GMAN method, but my husband complained about it a lot. He didn't see the point of the activities we did each session and straight up refused to do the homework assigned to us. I'd suggest trying therapy again if I thought it would help, but I don't see any outcome that makes me feel like he's paying me more attention without making my husband miserable. Divorce feels like a massive jump, and it would be super messy. Both of our names are on the deed to the house. All of our money is in one shared bank account, and his mom just co-signed for a car with me and added it to her insurance policy to help us save money. Our state requires a minimum 6-month separation period before filing. My husband has made it clear that he's 100% against divorce being the solution to our problems, so I don't think he would let it be a peaceful or easy separation. Even now, as I type this, my husband is outside watching a movie on his phone. He hasn't made a single attempt to talk to me today except to ask if I paid a medical bill. I've been crying ever since he told me to be grateful. I feel trapped in a failed marriage. It's like the last 4 years were all for nothing, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do in this situation. I'm sorry, but this is not going to work out. You two have different needs and expectations. While that can be improved by counseling, it sounds like the core differences are really about who you are as people. The only reason my parents are still together is because their religion does not allow for divorce, and their status within their church community is too important to them to risk ruining their image. My parents resent each other in silence. I want nothing like my parents' marriage. We share a lot of the same interests. Same taste in music, same love for horror movies. I actually enjoy video games too. I just don't commit nearly as much time to them as he does. And he wasn't always like this. In the beginning, he'd go outside for a smoke, maybe doom scroll TikTok for 15 to 20 minutes, then come back inside and hang out. We'd cook together, talk about our day, maybe even watch an episode of a show or the first bit of a movie together. Sometimes I would even sit outside with him. I don't know what happened, but that all started to slowly change after we bought our house last year. When he does actually give a shit, he's an incredibly kind and caring person. I always had a smile on my face around him up until this week. Update 1. I want to answer some recurring questions. No, my husband was not always like this. I knew he was an introvert because we were friends for 2 years before we started dating. I fell in love with all his little personality quirks, and we've had long discussions about both of our expectations long before the idea of marriage was ever on the table. I never wanted to fix him, nor did I ever expect him to change himself for me. However, I don't expect the internet to understand the intricacies of a relationship between two individuals based off one post. In the beginning of our relationship, I gave him his space when he needed it, but he would always return the affection that I needed from him. This avoidant behavior began right before we got married. More on this later. My husband is not autistic. He was tested twice as a child, as I found out from my MIL. He's just very antisocial. To get this out of the way, we have a very small and close-knit group of friends that he really enjoys being around. Outside of those chosen few, he doesn't like people. However, we both have untreated yet high-functioning ADHD. It was my husband's idea to do couples therapy before getting married. At the time, there was nothing wrong in our relationship. Simply put, we both saw the benefits that premarital counseling could have for us in the long run. How to effectively communicate emotions, how to properly resolve arguments, sharing household responsibilities, and keeping our marriage interesting 50 years down the road. My husband complained because most of the activities we did were at least 20 years old and felt outdated, i.e., taking messages from the landline voicemail. Who the hell still uses a landline? That being said, we still learned some great tools that we have been able to implement in our marriage, and they work really well for us, so we stopped therapy once we felt we no longer needed a mediator. Update 2. Sunday night, I decided I was going to leave. I knew I needed some genuine time and space away from my husband to get my head straight and figure out if a divorce was really what I wanted in this situation. So I called my parents and arranged for them to keep my dog for a couple of weeks. Yesterday morning, my best friend told me she was getting a guest room ready for me, and I started packing up my things. My husband came home from work a little early and saw all my stuff by the front door. He started crying and asked between sobs if I was leaving. All I did was nod my head and continued packing. What happened next feels like a blur. It's important to note here that a storm had knocked our power out earlier that morning, and it had not come back on at this point, so the house wasn't as cool as usual. My husband's crying became faster, and I heard him mumble something about a headache. He dropped his work stuff and stumbled to a bathroom, then started vomiting. Curiosity got the best of me, and when I peeked in to check on him, I knew something was wrong. His breathing had become shallow and rapid, and he was sweating more now than when he had walked in. He looked pale and was slurring his words a little. When I put my hand on his neck to see if he was okay, his skin was clammy and burning up. I realized in this moment that there was a strong chance he was having a heat stroke. I helped my husband out of his work clothes and into a cool shower, then went to find him some loose-fitting clothes and ice packs. Once he was out of the shower and dressed, I drove him straight to the small emergency room down the street. After an initial assessment, it was determined that my husband was probably not having a heat stroke but severe heat exhaustion. His body temperature started coming down after they put one of those air-filled cooling blankets over him, but he was still very weak and dehydrated. The doctor decided to keep him for observation while doing a few rounds of 4 fluids, and we were able to come home in the middle of the night after a bunch of different tests were done to make sure there was no damage to my husband's organs. While we waited, we had a lot of time to talk without any distractions. There was a lot of crying from both of us, but we finally got to the bottom of things. I won't bore you all with the details, but 2023 was not a good year for me. It started when my husband's truck flipped after getting hit by a drunk driver. We were wearing our seatbelts and managed to walk away with only some scrapes and bruises, but I developed PTSD and began having panic attacks while driving. I was under a ton of stress from planning our wedding, which caused high blood pressure and horrible migraines. At the same time, I was experiencing massive burnout from working in healthcare the last 4 years and during the COVID pandemic. I was diagnosed with manic bipolar disorder and was coping with an infertility diagnosis all within 6 months. My mental health was tanking, and I honestly just needed a little extra emotional support. This is around the time the arguments for more attention began. My husband and I eventually sat down to figure out a solution to my worsening mental state, and we both agreed that I could benefit from taking some extended time away from work, seeing as my symptoms were made worse by stress. My husband was happy to let me play housewife for as long as I needed while he provided for us, but I got bored easily staying home all day. I made the decision to quit my job last Christmas and took a higher-paying part-time job after the start of the new year. Even though my mental health was getting better, the arguments over attention started to get worse. My husband started to withdraw a bit, and what started as "give me 15 minutes to finish this game, then we can watch a movie or go grab food," turned into "go ask a friend to hang out or pick up some extra shifts at work if you don't want to stay home." I did those things and even started reading more and finally got around to decorating our house. It was clear he wanted his space, so I kept busy. I tried to find things to do together that he might enjoy, so we've planned 4 vacations over the next year for us to look forward to, our first trip being just 2 months away. I still felt lonely and continued to ask for affection, but it only made him withdraw more, and as summer started, his reason was being too tired from the heat. Now, we've had a lot going on in our lives over the last month or so. I made the decision to start working full-time again, and I was a little nervous about it, which probably prompted me to bring up the need for more attention. My original post was less about his behavior as a whole and more specific to his comment about being grateful. This comment was completely out of character for my husband and caught me off guard in the moment. My feelings were hurt, and I truly believed he meant what he said, that I should be grateful for bare minimum treatment. It made me question our entire relationship and whether or not this marriage would work if that's how he truly felt. Needless to say, the heat really was messing with his head. When I asked my husband why he thinks I should be grateful for how he's been treating me in our marriage, he doesn't remember saying that or even having the argument in the first place. The entire weekend he knew I was upset with him, but he couldn't figure out why, so he kept his distance until he felt like I had calmed down enough to talk about it. Coming home and seeing me ready to leave was his tipping point. Turns out my husband has been severely depressed since switching crews at work. His last superintendent dropped the ball on his promotion before sending him to work overnights on a chemical refinery turnaround. When that job finished, my husband got placed with a superintendent that openly does not like him and has a known, documented history of treating my husband badly due to the color of his skin, or lack thereof. Over the last few weeks, this superintendent has been giving my husband a really hard time and is now refusing to sign the company endorsement paperwork for him to begin operator school. My husband has been keeping this all bottled up inside, letting it eat away at him because he was too worried the stress of the situation would flare up my symptoms and trigger a manic episode. That's why he had been isolating himself so much, and paired with the heat, he had completely checked out mentally because he was trying to protect me. I'm sorry to disappoint so many of you, but I love my husband, and I've decided to stick by his side as we work through this together. My husband has agreed to set timers in order to limit his screen time. We are going to try therapy again, both together and individually, to work on communicating better and dealing with stress. Right now, he is still resting from the heat exhaustion, and hopefully he'll be better by this weekend. Now on to the next update. Husband is leaving me for a woman who pursued him, saying he can't let this opportunity pass, leaving me devastated and questioning if I made a mistake. My husband just told me he is leaving me, and I can't believe the reason. I need to give some background. I am 34F, and my husband is 38M. We've been married for almost 2 years, have dated 2 years before that, so overall a bit more than 4 years. He's always been very insecure about himself, even though he has a great personality, or so I thought. He's generous, caring, can express his emotions and all this stuff. When I got to know him better, I couldn't believe he wasn't taken. In fact, he had only been in 2 relationships in his life, both 5+ years long, though he told me that's because he's shy and ugly, and women don't really want anything from him, like ever, especially not good-looking ones. I am fairly conventionally attractive, and he has kept telling me for the past years how lucky he feels to finally have found his dream woman, and then her being as attractive as me. I was at the beginning, though, so I let him court me quite a bit before going out with him for the first time, etc. I really was fearing for some dark secret of his that I just hadn't uncovered yet. Plus, I don't want to look easy. But turns out, no, he's a really sweet guy and just very shy. I also don't think he's ugly. He's not in any way super handsome or so, and frankly, originally I thought he was not my type, but his charm melted all of that away quickly. Once we started thoroughly dating, things went fast because it all was so wonderful. Well, apparently, a while ago he was on his own in the outside area of a restaurant having lunch when this woman went by and apparently struck up a conversation with him. He's shown me a picture of her since I asked him, and she is drop-dead gorgeous. Maybe I am exaggerating because I'm so mad, but she definitely looks better than me. I have to admit, he didn't tell me much about what they talked about, just that she was very friendly and they exchanged numbers and started texting more and more often. He says she at some point openly started pursuing him, even though she knew he was married, saying she just really fell for him and can't let this opportunity pass. He said that he was hesitant once he realized that she was hitting on him, and he was also excited because this literally has never happened in his life. In the past, he repeatedly said that women, at least attractive ones like me, have it easy because we can lean back and let the guys approach us, whereas for him it was always hard work to even get a single date. I always replied that it's not really like that and that being attractive has its own problems, but he then always reminded me of the fact that he had to work really hard to get me to date him. He swears he has only met her one more time for lunch after the first encounter, and that he thinks it is not yet an affair. However, he thinks he wants to go forward with her because, as he put it, this is the first woman who is genuinely interested in me. I didn't have to text her for 3 months to get a date or anything. I can't let this pass, or something along those lines. My memory is a bit hazy. The 3 months refers to the time it took him to get a date with me, by the way, and that is why he says he is breaking up with me. He says it's the right thing to do because he wants to continue contact with her but also feels doing that would be emotional cheating, and he doesn't want to cheat on me so he ends it before actually starting something with her. I feel devastated. I know there's nothing I can do. I want to be mad at him, but I'm also mad at myself. I really liked him when we first met. Why did I give him a hard time? If I had said what I wanted back then, if I had pursued him instead of playing hard to get, he probably wouldn't be interested in that woman. But I always felt if a woman does that, she shows she's easy, and I didn't just want to get laid, so I thought I must act that way, and now it is biting me in the butt. And I, of course, am very mad at him, but he didn't even cheat on me. He's behaving exactly the way I always say people should act when they fall in love with someone else. I kind of wished he had actually cheated on me with her. That would actually make it easier. Update 1. A couple of days ago, I posted here about my husband suddenly leaving me because of, well, having experienced for the first time that a woman actually showed active interest in him. Since links are not allowed in this subreddit, please check my profile for my post history. Yesterday, my husband and I met for the first time since he up and left last Friday, and frankly, after the meetup I was very shaken. So it took me until today to be able to write about this. Since so many people have reached out to me with helpful comments and all, I think you deserve an update, but I really wasn't up to it yesterday. Also, this is really long, so sorry in advance. There's just so much to cope with, so here we go. The situation felt very awkward, and I got the impression the whole time that he genuinely feels sorry for how things were and that what he is doing hurts me. I know many of you said he's a douche, a cheater, and whatnot, and I really understand you and am mad at him myself, but on the other hand, you all do not know him like I do. He's a very honest person. He despises lying and is really bad at it. He carries his heart on his tongue, and I know him well enough to sense his feelings. Did that help me? Not much. Now, even if I wished, I couldn't paraphrase our talk, and I am sure I will miss certain things, and overall it was a mixture of him telling and me asking questions, and all is a big flurry in my head, so I'll just summarize, I guess. First, he told me that he really loved me, and he still does, but he feels that his feelings for the new woman are stronger. He told me her name. Let's call her Jasmine, not her real name. He admits Jasmine is gorgeous but claims that that on its own was in no ways relevant for his decision. Yeah, right. He told me that she originally approached him because of a book he was reading during lunch. Supposedly, the book's author is her uncle, and she was able to tell my husband some funny stories about the time her uncle drafted that book. He says he and Jasmine have very similar interests. Jasmine also reads sci-fi as he does because of said uncle, who is a sci-fi author, and both like gaming and stuff. He says after they exchanged numbers they initially only wrote about stuff like that, and later on they talked about other hobbies and interests and found more and more common ground, as he put it. He also admitted that, like 2 weeks or so ago, he started to wonder if he should actively tell me about her, seeing how she turned from an acquaintance to what he deems a friend. I interjected that they don't know each other long enough to consider her a friend, but he says he feels Jasmine is really genuine with him. This is a man who cannot pick up social clues unless they are spelled out for him, but whatever. He also feels a lot more in tune with Jasmine than he does with me. Admittedly, we seem to have less common interests, but I never felt like I have to be exactly like my partner. Opposites can complement each other well, and I always felt we do. Looks like he feels much happier with someone catering to his interests a lot more. He also became a bit self-critical then. He says after he left for his friend's place, he sat down and reread his conversation history with Jasmine, and he realized that she had indeed been flirting with him before she told him she wanted more. It didn't start out flirtatious, but he admits he totally missed that. He opened up the app on his phone and showed me the beginning, and then when she started flirting he might have tuned the messages, but at least the beginnings really read friendly. The flirtatious parts, however, were blatantly obvious in my eyes, but he actually blames himself for that and says that while that doesn't change his feelings for her, it means he should have noticed this earlier and, well, he said, make the decision to pursue her earlier. That sort of broke me, and I started sobbing because it sounds as if I never had a chance compared to Jasmine. He even wanted to console me, and I allowed that for a couple of minutes, but then I sought some distance again. It both felt good and bad to be in his arms. Then it was time to ask me why she is so attractive to him that he leaves me, his wife, for just the mere possibility of being with another woman. I mentioned that someone, I didn't say Reddit, suggested she might be a scam or just interested in breaking up marriages and going after men who are taken and such. He, of course, vehemently denied that. Supposedly they met last Sunday to go out for dinner, and they talked about the fact that she approached him even though he is married, and she claims to have a really bad conscience about this and that she never would have done it had she not felt such a deep connection between them, blah blah blah. I must admit I really struggled through that part because if it is true it hurts me, and if it isn't it hurts even more that he falls for BS. He then told me in excruciating detail about his dating life and how long he was a virgin and how he was always treated by girls back in middle school and high school and by the women in college and later on, how he really feels that he always has to be the one initiating, fighting even for a chance, and felt like he was always treated as unworthy by almost all women and how that made him bitter. He admitted that, but also how he always thought that someone who truly fits him, fits his personality, his character, his being, would be someone who would not make him jump through hoops, someone who'd outright tell him she is intrigued by him and wants him. He says he loves me dearly and was always very grateful for being with me, but that even with me he always felt somewhere between a beggar and the subject of a pity party where I bestowed the grace of my companionship onto him instead of actually liking and wanting him. When I asked him whether that means he settled for me, he vehemently denied that. He said when we started to date, I really treated him better than any woman had done before, so he really thought this was what he had been looking for, and before meeting Jasmine he never felt like he needed more. I, of course, tried to tell him that I am not with him out of pity or anything and explained why I made him wait 3 months and why I think the man should court the woman and so forth, and then I also admitted that I might not have given him the appreciation he deserved. This time it actually was his turn to drop tears for a bit. He said hearing that made him both grateful and happy that he never really communicated better about this. I told him that hearing him say that feels like he is putting the blame on me, and I swear to God his eyes like doubled their size and he looked genuinely shocked, and he apologized many times and said he did not want me to think he actually has any bad feelings about having to wait back then, and that this is a situation where no one is to blame but especially not me. He said I've been a wonderful wife and all, but that with Jasmine it just feels different and like a deeper connection that the two of us have, and that while he thought that I was wonderful he now realizes that what he really was looking for in life was something else. So he says reconciliation is not really an option because he realized that we're not right for each other, and even if it doesn't work out with Jasmine he knows now that he actually needs something that I just am not. I mentioned marriage counseling and he said that it's not like our marriage has issues, but that the issue is that we're just not right for each other. There were more things we said and maybe I'll add some later, but right now I'm too mentally exhausted, especially because I still don't feel like I can hate him because he felt so freaking honest. I think he at least truly believes all the things he said, but that woman still might be a total liar or a scam. He at least promised to be careful with her financially, but he assured me she's not. I don't know what to make of any of this. It hurts. I guess my marriage is over. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Neighborhood kids destroyed my lawn, so I set up sprinkler traps. It backfired, and my neighbor tried to sabotage my property at night. I'm James, 42M, and I've been living in my current house for about 5 years now. It's a nice corner property with a big front lawn that faces a cul-de-sac where a lot of neighborhood kids like to play. I bought this house after my divorce, seeing it as a fresh start and a place where I could finally have some peace and quiet. You see, I grew up in a chaotic household with 5 siblings, and as the oldest, I was always responsible for keeping things in order. It left me with a deep appreciation for tranquility and order in my adult life. When I first moved in, the neighborhood seemed perfect. It was quiet during the day when I worked from home as a software developer, and the evenings were filled with the gentle sounds of birds and the occasional passing car. I spent countless hours meticulously planning and maintaining my lawn. It became my sanctuary, a place where I could unwind after a long, long day of coding and conference calls. At first, I didn't mind the occasional stray ball or frisbee landing on my lawn. I'd just toss it back and go about my day. I even enjoyed these brief interactions with the neighborhood kids. It reminded me of my own childhood, playing street hockey with my brothers and the other kids on our block. But over the past year, things have gotten out of hand. The kids, mostly between 8 and 12 years old, have started using my lawn as an extension of their playground. They run across it, play tag, and even set up impromptu soccer games. The constant noise and distraction right outside my home office window is driving me crazy. It's affecting my work, my sleep, and my overall well-being. I've tried talking to the kids, politely asking them to play elsewhere. I even shared stories about the community park where I used to play as a kid, hoping to inspire them to find a more suitable spot. But they just nodded and went right back to trampling my grass the next day. I've spoken to some of their parents, too, but nothing seems to work. The parents just brush it off, saying things like, "Kids will be kids," or "It's just grass. It'll grow back." One dad, Mike, 39M, even had the audacity to tell me I should be grateful for the free entertainment. He doesn't understand that. For me, it's not entertainment. It's a disruption of the peaceful life I've worked so hard to create. The situation reminds me of my childhood neighbor, Mr. Grayson. He was always yelling at us kids to stay off his lawn. I used to think he was just a grumpy old man, but now I find myself empathizing with him. Is this what getting older feels like? Am I turning into the neighborhood Grinch? The final straw came last month. I had a crucial video call with a potential client, a contract that could have doubled my income for the year. As I was in the middle of my presentation, a group of kids started a loud game of tag right outside my window. Their shrieks and laughter drowned out my voice, and I could see the client's confused and annoyed expression. Needless to say, I didn't get the contract. After the call, I went outside to find that the kids had taken their game a step further. They had actually brought shovels and were digging holes in my lawn to set up a makeshift mini-golf course. My carefully maintained grass, which I had nurtured for years, was being torn up like it was nothing. When I confronted them, they just laughed and ran off, leaving behind a pockmarked lawn that looked like it had been hit by mortar fire. That night, as I sat on my porch looking at the devastation, I felt a mix of anger and despair. This lawn wasn't just grass to me. It represented the order and peace I had craved all my life. It was a symbol of the home I had created for myself after my divorce, a place where I felt in control, and now it felt like that was being taken away from me. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I spent hours researching solutions online, considering everything from fences to security cameras, but then I came across an article about motion-activated sprinkler systems. It seemed perfect, a non-confrontational way to protect my property without causing any real harm. I hired a landscaping company to install an automatic sprinkler system around the perimeter of my lawn. But here's the twist. I had them install motion sensors that would trigger the sprinklers whenever someone steps on the grass. The landscaper, an older guy named Bill, gave me a knowing smile as he installed the system. "Had some trouble with neighborhood kids myself back in the day," he said. "This will do the trick." The first day after the installation was both hilarious and vindicating. I watched from my window as unsuspecting kids ran onto my lawn, only to be met with a sudden spray of water. They squealed and ran off, looking completely confused. Word spread quickly, and soon the neighborhood kids were treating my lawn like it was lava, carefully avoiding it at all costs. I thought I'd solved the problem, but apparently, I've only created a new one. Parents started showing up at my door, furious that their precious little angels got wet. My next-door neighbor, Karen, 38F, was particularly upset. She's always been a bit of a busybody, the self-appointed mayor of our little cul-de-sac. She accused me of being a grumpy old man who hates children and threatened to report me to the HOA for creating a hazardous environment. I tried to explain that I'm just protecting my property, but Karen wasn't having it. She started a campaign against me, telling other neighbors that I'm unstable and dangerous. Now I'm getting dirty looks whenever I step outside, and I've even found a few nasty notes in my mailbox. One of them read, "Go back to where you came from, lawn Nazi." It was childish and hurtful, reminding me of the bullies I dealt with in middle school. My wife, Sarah, 40F, thinks I might have gone too far. We met 2 years ago at a local farmer's market. She was selling homemade jams, and I was immediately charmed by her warm smile and easygoing nature. She's usually my rock, the voice of reason when I get too caught up in my own head. But this situation has her worried. She suggests we should have tried harder to reason with the parents or maybe put up a fence instead. But I don't see why I should have to fence off my own property just because other people can't control their kids. Last night, as we were getting ready for bed, Sarah said something that's been echoing in my mind. "James," she said, "I know this lawn means a lot to you, but is it worth turning our whole neighborhood against us? Is this the kind of environment we want to live in?" I didn't have an answer for her then, and I'm still struggling with it now. I don't think I'm in the wrong. It's my property, and I have the right to protect it. The sprinklers aren't hurting anyone. At worst, a few kids get a little wet. But now I'm being treated like the neighborhood villain. It's bringing back memories of being the outcast in school, always the one who preferred books to sports, never quite fitting in. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for installing this sprinkler system? Should I have found a different solution? Or am I justified in protecting my property this way? I feel like I'm at a crossroads here, and I'm not sure which path to take. Update 1. Wow, I didn't expect this post to blow up like it did. Thanks for all your comments and suggestions. I've read through them all, and I want to give you an update on what's happened since my original post. First off, Karen made good on her threat to report me to the HOA. Last week, I received a formal letter from them stating that several complaints had been filed against me for my aggressive landscaping choices. They scheduled a hearing for next month to discuss the issue and potential consequences. The letter was cold and formal, reminding me of the divorce papers I received years ago. It left me with the same sinking feeling in my stomach. In preparation for the hearing, I decided to gather some evidence to support my case. I set up a couple of security cameras to record what was happening on my lawn when I wasn't watching. What I captured was pretty shocking. Not only were kids still trying to play on my lawn, although much less frequently due to the sprinklers, but I caught several adults deliberately setting off the sprinklers and then quickly running away. In one particularly infuriating clip, I saw Karen herself sneaking onto my property at night with a pair of gardening shears, attempting to cut the wires to the sprinkler system. Watching that footage brought back memories of my childhood bully, Tommy Hawkins. He used to destroy my science fair projects the night before the big day. Seeing Karen, a grown woman, engaging in such petty vandalism made me feel like that helpless kid all over again. I immediately reported this to the police. They took my statement and the video evidence but warned me that since no significant damage was done, they might not be able to do much beyond giving Karen a warning. The officer, a young guy named Dave, seemed sympathetic. "Between you and me," he said, "I get it. I've got 2 kids of my own, and if they were tearing up someone's property, I'd want to know about it." The next day, I confronted Karen about what I'd seen. Instead of denying it, she flew into a rage, screaming about how I was destroying the community and robbing children of their childhood. She even had the audacity to blame me for her actions, saying I'd forced her to take matters into her own hands. Her face was red with anger, reminding me of my father's temper tantrums when I was a kid. I found myself instinctively backing away, my heart racing. Our argument attracted the attention of other neighbors, and soon we had a small crowd gathered on the sidewalk. To my surprise, not everyone was on Karen's side. My elderly neighbor, Mr. Thompson, 72, spoke up in my defense. He said, "I've been bothered by the noise from the kids too, but I've been too afraid of confrontation to say anything. Back in my day," he said, his voice shaky but determined, "we respected other people's property. These kids today, they think they own the whole neighborhood." Another neighbor, Lisa, 35F, admitted that her son had been one of the kids playing on my lawn. She apologized for not taking my concerns seriously before and promised to have a serious talk with her son about respecting other people's property. Her sincerity touched me, reminding me of the rare occasions when my own mother would stand up for me against my siblings' teasing. However, there were still plenty of parents who sided with Karen. They accused me of being petty and overreacting. One dad, the same Mike who had dismissed my concerns earlier, even suggested that I should be grateful for the free lawn aeration the kids were providing by running around on my grass. His smug grin made my blood boil, but I managed to keep my cool. The whole situation has created a clear divide in the neighborhood. Some people have started avoiding me altogether, while others have reached out to offer support. Sarah is stressed about the whole situation and worried about how it might affect our standing in the community long term. Last night, she confessed that she's been having trouble sleeping, worried about potential retaliation from angry neighbors. "I support you, James," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "but I'm scared. What if they damage our car? Or worse?" Her fears aren't unfounded. "I've been having nightmares about coming home to find our house vandalized or our garden destroyed. I'm standing my ground for now, but I'll admit the constant tension is starting to wear on me. The HOA hearing is in 3 weeks, and I'm nervous about what might happen. I've started looking into legal options, just in case things escalate further. The whole situation reminds me of a case study we did in my business ethics class in college about a homeowner who was sued for protecting his property. I never thought I'd find myself in a similar situation. Yesterday, as I was mowing the lawn, a task that used to bring me joy but now fills me with dread, I overheard a group of kids whispering and pointing at me from across the street. One of them called me Mr. Sprinkler, and they all burst into giggles. It was a stark reminder of how this whole situation has changed my identity in the neighborhood. I've gone from being the quiet, hardworking guy who sometimes shared homemade cookies with the neighbors to being the subject of ridicule and gossip. I'll keep you updated on what happens at the hearing and any other developments. Again, thanks for all your support and advice. It's good to know I'm not alone in thinking that homeowners have a right to protect their property. But as the hearing approaches, I find myself wondering, at what cost is protecting my lawn worth all this stress and conflict? I don't have an answer yet, but I hope I'll find one soon. Update 2. Hey everyone, I'm back with another update, and things have taken an unexpected turn. The HOA hearing was yesterday, and it didn't go quite as I expected. I arrived at the community center where the meeting was held, my stomach in knots. The room was set up like a courtroom, with the HOA board members seated at a long table at the front. As I walked in, I could feel all eyes on me. It reminded me of the time I had to give a presentation in front of the whole school in 8th grade. The same nervous energy, the same feeling of being judged. I came prepared with my evidence. Videos of the kids destroying my lawn, footage of Karen's attempted vandalism, and photos of the damage done to my property over the past year. As I set up my laptop to present, I noticed Karen and her supporters huddled together on one side of the room, whispering and shooting glares in my direction. The meeting started tense, with the HOA president, a stern-looking woman named Margaret, calling everyone to order. She explained the purpose of the meeting and then invited me to present my case. As I started speaking, my voice shaky at first but growing stronger, I noticed a shift in the room. The HOA board members, who I expected to be hostile, actually seemed sympathetic to my situation. I showed them the progression of my lawn over the past year, from a well-manicured paradise to a trampled mess. I played the videos of kids repeatedly ignoring my requests to stay off the grass, and then the footage of adults deliberately setting off the sprinklers out of spite. When I showed Karen's nighttime escapade with the gardening shears, there was an audible gasp in the room. What really turned the tide, though, was when Mr. Thompson spoke up. He shared his own experiences with the noise and disruption and how it had been affecting his health. He even admitted to taking sleeping pills just to get some rest. "I fought in Vietnam," he said, his voice cracking with emotion, "and I never thought I'd say this, but sometimes the noise from these kids is worse than the bombs." His testimony seemed to resonate with a lot of the older residents in the room. Then something unexpected happened. One of Karen's biggest supporters, a mom named Rachel, 36F, suddenly burst into tears. Through her sobs, she confessed that her son had been one of the main instigators of the lawn games. She admitted that she'd been too lenient with him and apologized for not taking my complaints seriously. "I was so focused on not being like my strict parents," she said, wiping her eyes, "that I went too far in the other direction." This confession seemed to open the floodgates. Other parents started speaking up, acknowledging that they'd turned a blind eye to their kids' behavior. Even Karen looked uncomfortable as the tide of public opinion began to turn. I caught her eye across the room, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of regret on her face. The HOA board called for a brief recess to discuss the situation. As we waited, the tension in the room was palpable. I found myself pacing back and forth, my mind racing with possible outcomes. Sarah squeezed my hand reassuringly, but I could see the worry in her eyes, too. When they returned, they announced their decision. My sprinkler system could stay, but with a few modifications. They suggested I adjust the sensors to only activate during certain hours and to reduce the water pressure to make it less of a shock. They also proposed a new community initiative to create a designated play area for the neighborhood kids. They suggested converting an unused lot at the end of the street into a small park, complete with playground equipment and a proper soccer field. Karen tried to protest, but she was quickly shut down by other residents. The atmosphere in the room had completely changed, and suddenly people were coming up to me to apologize and offer support. Mike, the dad who had been so dismissive before, approached me with a sheepish look on his face. "I was wrong," he said, extending his hand. "I'm sorry for not taking your concerns seriously." After the meeting, Sarah and I were approached by a group of parents who suggested we all work together on the new park project. They even offered to help repair the damage to our lawn as a gesture of goodwill. As we discussed plans for the park, I found myself feeling cautiously optimistic for the first time in months. I'm still processing everything that happened. While I'm relieved that I don't have to remove my sprinkler system, I'm a bit overwhelmed by this sudden shift in neighborhood dynamics. Sarah is thrilled about the potential for positive change and is already talking about hosting a neighborhood barbecue to help mend fences. I'll admit I'm cautiously optimistic, but a part of me is still wary. After all, actions speak louder than words, and I'll be keeping a close eye on how things develop from here. The memory of Karen with her gardening shears is still fresh in my mind, and I can't help but wonder if this newfound community spirit will last. As I sit on my porch looking out at my lawn, still a bit worse for wear but slowly recovering, I find myself reflecting on this whole experience. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, from frustration and anger to hope and cautious optimism. I never expected a dispute over my lawn to turn into such a complex community issue. I'll update again if anything significant happens. For now, I'm trying to take things one day at a time, focusing on rebuilding my lawn and hopefully some of the neighborhood relationships. 2. Thanks again for all your support through this crazy situation. Update 3. It's been a couple of months since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have progressed in our neighborhood. The community park project is well underway. A committee was formed to oversee the development, and to my surprise, I was asked to join. At first, I was hesitant. The thought of working closely with the same people who had been my adversaries not too long ago made me uncomfortable. But Sarah encouraged me to give it a shot, reminding me that this could be a chance to reshape my role in the community. Working on the park has given me a chance to interact with my neighbors in a more positive way. I found common ground with people I never thought I'd get along with. Mike, the dad who used to dismiss my concerns, turned out to be quite knowledgeable about landscaping. We've spent hours discussing the best grass types for high-traffic areas, and I found myself actually enjoying his company. Even some of the kids who used to play on my lawn have been helping out, planting flowers and painting benches. There's a 10-year-old boy named Tommy who reminds me a lot of myself at that age. He's always full of questions about the plants and the sprinkler system. Last week, he asked if I could teach him how to properly mow a lawn. It was a surreal moment, realizing that the same kids I once saw as adversaries were now looking to me for guidance. Karen, however, has been noticeably absent from these community efforts. I heard through the grapevine that she's been talking about moving. Part of me feels a little guilty, wondering if I push things too far, but another part is relieved. The other day, I saw her loading boxes into a moving truck. Our eyes met for a moment, and she gave me a small, tight nod before turning away. Felt like the closing of a chapter. As for my lawn, it's looking better than ever. True to their word, several neighbors helped resod the damaged areas. Mr. Thompson even taught me some of his gardening tricks, and we've started having weekly chess matches on my porch. It turns out he used to be a landscaper before he retired, and he's full of stories about the elaborate gardens he used to maintain. The sprinkler system is still in place, but I've barely had to use it. The kids seem to have developed a new respect for property boundaries. A few days ago, I actually saw a group of them scolding a newcomer who was about to cut across my lawn. It was a surreal moment watching them enforce the very rules they used to break. Sarah and I did host that barbecue she wanted. Almost the entire neighborhood showed up, and it was nice. There were a few awkward moments, like when Rachel's son accidentally knocked over the punch bowl and froze, clearly expecting me to explode, but I just laughed it off and helped him clean up. The relief on his face was palpable. I'm not naive enough to think everything's perfect now. There are still some tensions, and I doubt I'll ever be the neighborhood's favorite person. Just yesterday, I overheard someone refer to me as Sprinkler James. Not exactly a term of endearment, but better than some of the names I was called before. This whole experience has been a roller coaster, and while I stand by my initial actions, I've learned a lot about community, communication, and compromise. Who knew a sprinkler system could lead to all this? As I sit here on my porch, watching the sun set over my now peaceful lawn, I can't help but reflect on how much has changed. The sound of kids playing in the distance doesn't fill me with dread anymore. Instead, it's become a pleasant background noise, a reminder of the community we're building. Sarah joins me on the porch, handing me a cold beer. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asks, settling into the chair next to mine. I take a sip, considering her question. "Just thinking about how different things are now," I reply. She smiles and takes my hand. "Different good?" she asks. I nod, squeezing her hand. "Different good. Anyway, thanks for following along with this crazy story. Here's hoping for quieter, drier days ahead." Now on to the next story. Story 6. Rich fiancé made me pay for everything to prove I wasn't a gold digger because of his past traumas. So I just left him after years of financial ABS. I, 31F, struggle with my fiancés, 32M, frugality, and I'm not sure if I want to marry him anymore after a 3-year relationship thrown away. As my fiancé follows my regular account, I met my fiancé 3 years ago. He came out of an abusive marriage just 2 years before we met. One of her absolute abuses was financial. She bled him dry, made him buy expensive jewelry only to give it away or break it after an argument, designer shoes, clothes, a big house, cars, Caribbean trips, you name it, she made him pay for it. She also took him to the cleaners in the divorce. However, my fiancé is very well off. He makes far over 6 figures, almost 7. On top of that, he inherited a few million from his grandfather, and his parents gifted him and his siblings a few cool million as well. So yes, the financial abuse was bad, but he does not suffer financially. He has more money than he will ever need. Last year, I moved into his house. I do not pay rent, but I split the bills and buy food. I pay for my own clothes and jewelry. I have a good job and I can take care of myself. However, things have been taking a turn for the worse, and I feel miserable. His house was empty when I moved in. He had hand-me-down furniture, maybe 3 forks and 2 knives. He wouldn't put on the heating, so the house felt cold and moldy. He has no curtains, no decorations. His ex took everything not bolted down, and he was too cheap to replace it. Just imagine a $1 million house like that. I am grateful that I can live in his house. It is something I could never afford myself, but I didn't want to live in squalor. so I bought some kitchen supplies and some furniture. But at some point, I realized I was dipping into my savings all the time, and he did nothing. I looked into curtains, but those things are expensive. His house has so many windows, it is crazy. I didn't want to pay for this anymore. I told him I needed a fund to furnish his house. He blew up at me that I was just with him for his money. I pointed out all the money I spent on his house, the gifts, and the trips because he pays for nothing ever because he wants to be sure I am not here for the money. The fact is, if we break up, I have nothing. The house is not mine. If I spend all my savings on his house, I will be left with absolutely nothing. He wants a prenup, and I am fine with that, but I can't help but feel used. Next to that, I am jealous of his ex-wife. I feel like she got treated well, and I am neglected. He proposed to his ex on a cruise with a $10,000 white gold diamond ring. I got the rhodium-plated Swarovski stuff that might cost like $100. The proposal was at a picnic in the park I organized, paid for groceries, and enslaved in the kitchen for. I almost said no out of pure disappointment. However, I am afraid to bring it up and to be called a gold digger. I don't want to be funding a millionaire's lifestyle. He loves everything as long as I pay for it. As soon as he has to pay, it is frivolous, unnecessary. I can live like a poor person by myself. At least the fact there are literal millions lying around doesn't hang over me to bum me out, and I would just be paying for my own lifestyle. Why bother for calling off a wedding purely for financial reasons? Because I love this man, but I imagine our cheap wedding in contrast to his ex's extravaganza. Will our future kids be able to have some luxuries, or only if I pay for it? What if I ever become a stay-at-home mom? Will I have to beg to put the heating on? Edit to answer questions I see a lot. I know the abuse is not made up. His family and friends told me separate stories of the abuse they witnessed. Not only did it confirm it, it showed me she was way more terrible than I thought. Like stealing heirloom jewelry of his grandma with Alzheimer's right after she was widowed, pretending she was gifted these things even though everyone knew grandma hated her guts. I did not realize or see he is doing the same to me as she was to him, and he is subconsciously punishing me for what was done to him. I am not trying to force a lifestyle on him where he was previously happy in. He told me prior to moving in that he left his house like this because he was depressed after his wife took everything. Even the curtains. That it makes him sad, and he wants a cozy home. He just didn't know where to start. His house is paid off thanks to Granddad. He isn't actually spending much on utilities either. The house is very well isolated and has solar panels. It is weird to see how cheap being rich really is. I am not asking for designer furniture. IKEA all the way, and I have refurbished second-hand furniture myself. I am actually pretty thrifty. I see where my jealousy over the ex's lifestyle might have triggered some people. Let me explain. A $10,000 ring is insane and stupid to me. I do not want that because I would fear for losing it every day. I don't need an over-the-top wedding. However, it almost feels like, for her, he did effort, wanted to give her what made her happy, put effort and thought into it. With me, it almost feels like he wants to prove how little he can give me. He talked about how his wedding would be cheaper than my actually financially struggling cousin's wedding. I can't help but feel he wants to demonstrate how cheap he can treat me, and I already feel embarrassed about the family that would have been at both, and I will feel like the discount wife. I don't like to say it, but it feels like he gets off on it to some extent. We are almost talking washing paper plates at this moment. Yes, I did discuss selling the mansion I really don't need and moving to a more modest house. Especially knowing this is his ex's pick. He doesn't want to do that. He loves this house, but I feel really intimidated living in a house I could never afford anyway. And so many large windows. I haven't talked to him yet, but a pause on the marriage and IC is a must. I already am looking for IC because I realized I might indeed be too much of a people pleaser, allowing him to control me with the ghost of his ex. I also am going to separate for a while. I am looking to rent something for a few months so I can get some space. Thank you all for your insights and comments. Comment. Not he a hole. I understand you've had some trauma in your past, and I'm sorry you went through that, but I can't allow you to mistreat me because of it. It burns me up inside that you gave her everything, but I have to beg for the bare minimum. I deserve to feel cherished by my partner as I have cherished you. Opie. OMG, that hit me right in the feels. Comment. I am not with you because of the money you have, and if you can't trust that, then that's something you need to work on. I cannot live without heat, furniture, curtains, and basic decency just to prove to you that I am not a financial abuser like your ex. It feels as if you are projecting that image onto me, and that is unfair. His way of coping is extremely unhealthy. What he should be doing is talking to a therapist about how he can communicate his needs to you, not shutting you out and behaving the complete opposite of how he did with his ex. He should set some healthy boundaries on how he spends his money. Sure, but he also needs to acknowledge that you asking for some financial contribution to the house you live in isn't the same as his ex demanding he take her on a cruise. He needs to find some ways he can feel appreciated when he does spend money on things you benefit from, and he needs to trust that he is in full control of his money. You have no desire to take that from him. Update 1. Okay. I hope this update makes sense because I'm very confused and not really doing that well at the moment. Well, Reddit, you changed my life. Thank you so much for all your ideas and insights. Honestly, I don't think I would have had the courage to do what I did without you guys. I went to therapy, took the day off just to get my racing mind to calm down. Therapy has confirmed things you guys suspected. I am a people pleaser. I wanted to save him, and I have internalized the idea that any effort and every penny I want him to spend on me makes me a gold digger. I will have weekly sessions to work on me. I realized I would have never taken this treatment from any of my exes, even though I made more than them. The idea I had to prove myself worthy to be with a millionaire and not be in there for the money got into my head pretty early. I called one of his siblings I'm pretty close with and just told her everything. She was not surprised but just sad about how unhappy he was making me. She told me that from the day we started, he had this idea that I was out of his league. He struggled to understand why I wanted to be with him, and he probably just thought it must be my money. She told me she already talked to him in the past to treat me better. She was furious about the proposal. This information confused me a little. I was a little hurt she never discussed any of this before, but she thought it was none of her business. She also explained how she and her husband organized their finances. He also doesn't have as much as her. I took the opportunity to pack a bag. I haven't found a place yet, but I'm going to stay with my parents. I made up my mind that I will want at least 6 months apart to get myself in order. I made sure my stuff was in the car because, honestly, I had no idea how the conversation would go. So, into the most difficult part, the talk. I waited for him to come home. He was pretty late, but I didn't want to sleep another night on this. Pretending I was fine while I was contemplating all this just ate me up. I had written down what I wanted to say. I have never been so scared before. I didn't want to hurt him, and I didn't know how he would react. I took some advice from here. I opened that I was moving out and that I wanted to pause our engagement. He was very quiet and just sat down. I told him he really hurt me by calling me a gold digger and that I am done walking on eggshells and feeling guilty for just wanting basic things. I told him I was unhappy and felt neglected. I also told him that after 3 years of me showing up for him, he still doesn't think I'm here for him. It is not going to happen. He was just quiet. He didn't say anything. I told him that the constant comparing to his ex was unhealthy and unfair. Punishing me for her sins was abusive. I told him comparing her to me all the time has triggered me comparing myself to her and starting to feel like she was worth more than me. One of the things about her was mostly ungratefulness. He would do nice things for her, but it was never enough. The thing is, he doesn't do nice things for me, and I have to be grateful for the pleasure of picking up the bill. I told him he was not ready for marriage, that I dreaded having kids with him and living like this, that I didn't trust he would take care of me if I would become a stay-at-home mom. And at that point, I just called him abusive and a user. I was getting pretty angry saying all this out loud, losing my composure and script a little bit. He remained quiet with almost no emotion on his face. I stayed quiet, but nothing came out, so I decided that I would just leave. Only when I got up to go, he said, "Please don't go." He asked me if I was pausing the wedding or calling it off. He wanted to know if it was over or if he still had a shot. I told him I wanted out of this house. I honestly don't want to live in his ex's palace of sadness anymore. I needed him to go to therapy and especially financial therapy. I needed a separation. I told him I was open to couples counseling if he went into IC. He begged me not to do the separation, but honestly, I really wanted it. I just told him to think about it and I left him. He was finally showing some emotions. He was crying at this point. He sent me a very long text somewhere in the AM, told me he was a wreck and couldn't sleep. He made all kinds of promises. He would go into therapy, sell his house, buy a smaller one, and make sure I am taken care of whatever happens. He said he would help me decorate and we will make a home. He again asked me to please come home, but to me it doesn't feel like home there anyway. I feel very empty and tired. I have been sleeping most of the day. I feel guilty but also a little bit relieved, if that makes sense. I don't know if I actually want back if he does all that. I'd say I'm a little unsteady right now. I need some time to process. I will go back for the kitchen supplies and my TV. I won't take anything else of the furniture. This is for the exact same reason I was unwilling to buy everything. His house is huge, so the couch is huge. I can't take it. Update 2. Hi everybody. Let me just say I'm overwhelmed by the number of people really caring about me and asking for updates. Strangers who care about you is a feeling like no other. Thank you. So, as I said, I left. I am looking for an apartment I can afford. My parents are helping out. I am living with them and saving up. I am not closing all doors, but as for now, we are broken up. I have no contact. The first week, he transferred a large amount to my account. It really rubbed me the wrong way. It just showed me that he still thought that money was what kept me here. I deducted the couch I left and transferred everything else back. I asked for no contact after this. He has been respectful of it, and I feel free at the moment. I felt guilty for my needs, for wanting to be taken out every once in a while. The longer I'm out, the harder I realize it was abuse. I have an autoimmune problem, and the cold house caused it to flare up. Even after that, he kept turning the heat down. He'd rather have me miserable than pay, $100 extra at the end of the year? The last thing I heard is that he put the Palace of Sadness on the market. I have seen the ad, so happy he is going through with that. I heard from his sister that he is in therapy. I am happy for that and I hope he keeps that up. He is keeping his promises so far, but I need to see real change, and even then, I really don't know. I am building my own life by myself, thinking about getting a puppy. If I give him another shot, it has to start all from scratch. I want to start dating again and take it slow. Therapy is really a good idea. I now know I was just bringing this on myself as a people pleaser, a savior, wanting this man to be happy so bad I forgot about myself. Never again. So that is all there is to say, really. Now for some comments where Opie replied, comment. Best of luck. Please never forget your worth again, because others will shortchange you if you allow this from day one and let him play his fantasy revenge on you. The red flags were there so early. Loving ourselves is the key to a happy life. Now my question is, did you previously communicate your feelings before just ending it? Did you wait until you stopped loving him? Opie, I did multiple times. I had a few breakdowns where I told him I was unhappy, especially when my autoimmune disease just kicked into high gear. I told him I was done being cold. Then the discussion started about what is cold, and I had to negotiate a temperature setting he was okay with. He would still turn it down behind my back. Back then, the curtains were just the last straw for me. He was giddy and happy about all other changes I made to his home with my money. I thought it would not be so weird to ask him to pitch in, right? I had done so much, sacrificed so much, and he still blew up at me. What kind of gold digger pays for everything for 3 years? If I was one, I was really bad at it. So yes, I communicated over and over and nothing changed. I am pretty shocked he is actually doing something right now, but honestly, I think it is a little too late. I don't want to shut the door completely, but I will never ever be cold in my life ever again. Thank you for everyone reaching out to me. I have closed in on a little apartment for myself. I got a puppy. After being in a home where I was truly loved. My parents. I realized how sad, cold, and alone I had been over time. I went blind for a lot of things. Blind to a comfortable home temperature, comfortable with thinking about every penny spent, feeling guilty for buying that dress I wanted for so long that was finally on sale, feeling entitled for wanting date nights, being treated sometimes. I started to think about what makes me happy. I love to travel, dress up to go to a nice restaurant, throw dinner parties, entertain people, think about Christmas gifts 6 months in advance, have a cozy house. and I realized just how much he had taken from me with that one little sentence. Is that really necessary? Is anything ever if you have a roof, food, bed, and a TV? You are there, right? Is travel necessary? Is having nice clothes necessary? Is a shower necessary? A haircut? Party? A hobby? A wedding? No. I know now that abusers are not, per definition, bad people. He is broken and he has trauma. I have no more time or energy for him. He got free from abuse and decided to become the abuser. I know he is in therapy and we initially agreed on 6 months not to low contact, but I felt I was certain it was not for me anymore, and I didn't want to keep him dangling. Breaking up with him was very hard. It made me very sad. I never wanted to hurt him, and I love this man very deeply. I wanted us to be each other's happy ever after. We both came from dark places, and I wanted us to thrive together. His family told me I was the one. I was everything he was looking for, and I felt so lucky. But we only have one life, and he has so much work to do before he even becomes the bare minimum of what I needed. I feel failed, like my story has a bad ending. I feel very broken and sad. I will take my time to just be me. I hope he does the same. I truly hope he finds the one and becomes happy. Mostly I hope that for myself, but for now I'm enough by myself with a puppy. Thank you all for your time and support. I am going to have a little cry in some fur baby's fluffy fur. Comment. This is so far from a bad ending. A bad ending would have been staying until nothing was left of you. A bad ending would have been bleeding you dry and you being stuck. You put yourself first and that will always be good. And to add to the positivity, this is probably the kick he needed to get past his trauma. Opie. I think you were spot on. He has said these things himself. He didn't know how bad he was until he came home to me leaving. He has told me he hates himself for letting me walk and letting me be this miserable. He is in therapy as far as I know because I am no contact and I hope he does well. I really felt, once I was out, how much of myself was lost. I went through quite a dark time realizing how far I went for this man. But I'm getting better. Comment. It does feel like a sad ending. I get the sadness of knowing the magical ending wasn't going to happen, of the hope that he would see the light and make the changes he needed to in order to make you feel valued. But at the end of the day, it's a happy ending as well. You have a puppy who loves you, and he demonstrated through his anger that he still holds his values of stinginess higher than he holds you, so you don't have to wonder. This really feels like the ending of Inside Out where a core memory comes in, and it is a mix of joy and sadness isn't bad. Sadness helps us remember what is important. You are important. I'm happy for you that you have been able to connect with the things that bring you joy and surrounded yourself with them. But please stay open. I know you have joked that you are fine being single forever, and if that is the course of your life, then that's all well and good. Being single doesn't mean lonely, as you truly know. While you entertain in your apartment, guard yourself against becoming a version of your ex in the same way he became a version of his ex. Not that you would abuse others, but that you would abuse yourself by closing yourself off from people to keep yourself safe. You deserve that joy and all the happiness in the world. Opie. Thank you. I will be open to someone again, but only when it comes out of a place of, wow, this person is something else, not interested in anything else. I know now I ran past several red flags just because this man could give me the life I dreamed of. Married, nice house, some kids, a life with no worries. But he was not that man. He has sent me letters upon letters how sorry he is, taking accountability, but I can't anymore. I just don't want to try again. I hope he does well for himself. He is in therapy and doing his best. I hope he is happy one day. I just don't want to be part of it anymore. So yes, it is no Disney ending, but it is also not my ending. It is a real beginning. Comment. He's now taking accountability. Last time he was angry at you for not respecting what he can do with his money. Opie. Yep, he is very sorry about that. He doesn't know why he reacted like that. He is ashamed about it. Money suddenly doesn't matter to him anymore. These are all things in his texts, letters, and phone calls, but it has been a while since I have had contact with him. Even if he changes a lot now, my question is, why couldn't he do that then? I got sick when I got sad and told him I was unhappy. Why can he only change when he is in pain because I left? That says it all. I really hope he finds himself and that he will be happy in the future, but I don't want to be part of it anymore. Update 3. I was in a financially abusive relationship. With enough time passing now, I am more comfortable with the word abuse. I fought it for a long time because he did not scream at me, hit me, or call me names. He just used triangulation and the image of his abusive ex to use my own kindness against myself and to get me to fall in line. Spend my limited savings into furniture, luxuries, and nights out for a goddamn multimillionaire just to have some comfort in life. Constantly trying to prove I was no gold digger by having zero needs, living in a cold house and buying him everything he could ever want. I never lived an impoverished existence then when I was with a person who actually had loads of money. More than I could possibly comprehend. When I left, I really struggled to keep at it. I was so scared to go at life by myself to actually have to pinch pennies. He kept telling me what I wanted to hear for so long. Went into therapy, begged me to come back. It died into my resolve, made me doubt if I was making a mistake. A few things made me go on. 1. My colleagues who were more friends than coworkers who knew all my stories into details hugged me and told me they were so proud of me for leaving. Their feeling was so authentic it rubbed off on me. I was also proud I left, and I couldn't let them in me down by going back. 2. My boss once passed my office when I was working late and he said, "Never give men second chances. They never change. You deserve someone who gets it right from the start." I don't know what prompted him to say this to me, but it stuck with me. 3. My trainer who knows some stories said to me, "You gave everything to get less than nothing back. It is like me getting $100 from you, and to repay you, I'll take another $100 from your wallet. Why would you want to take that deal again? He has a debt with you he can't repay, and I don't mean cash. I mean emotional energy, love, and kindness." 4. I read somewhere, "Don't wake up in the same miserable place 10 years from now because you fear the change you have to make today." That hit me very hard. I have bought my own apartment. I felt like a poor little mouse being surrounded by people who make my monthly wage in a few days. But the fact is, I have a very good job. I earn far above average. I am able to have a nice place, nicely furnished, and I can even support a puppy. I live by myself but feel endlessly more warmth than in a relationship. I love myself way more. I am not riddled with guilt over wanting to have a cozy house, go out for dinner sometimes. I am so happy I dragged myself out of this relationship. I kept at it and moved on. Keep going, one foot in front of the other. It is hard, but you can do this. I am proud of you. Update 4. The money is gone. I am not going to get that back or fight for it. I even had to block him because at some point he got petty and wanted me to pay rent for the time I lived with him, so no way I was opening that discussion. Whatever, lesson learned. I may look poor compared to millionaires, but I'm doing fine. The sister and I did get along for a while. We share a hobby and talked about that. But recently I've been official and out in the open with my new boyfriend, and she struggles with this. Maybe she was hoping it would still work out or something. I don't know. But she has been a lot colder. This man, wow. People say never settle because there is better out there for you. I never believed it, honestly. I was ready to be a crazy dog lady for the rest of my life. I was enjoying being single. My friends urged me to start dating just to get the hang of it. He was my third date. I went against my will and was 100% not into it. But when I saw him in real life, sparks flew like never before. I am in my 30s, so you would have thought I was experienced at all. But this, wow. He is everything my ex was not. He is kind and caring, cooks me dinner, gets flustered but is grateful for gifts he gets. He treats me to dinners, will not even allow me to go Dutch on it. He has planned and booked dates and trips months in advance even before we were well and good official, buys me gifts. He is not as wealthy as my ex, but he makes a good living. His income is comparable to mine, but he treats me like a queen. And between me and you and all Redditors that dig this deep in the comments, the lovemaking is insane. I guess giving people give everywhere freely. So please take a wait and never settle ever. Trust the process, babe. Now for a comment where Opie replayed. Comment 1, I hope you told him off after the abuse you suffered. He should shut his mouth and be grateful you didn't sue him for emotional distress. Opie. Too much energy to waste on a man who wasted so much already. I just never want to see him again. I hope he finds the help he needs, and I hope he becomes a happy person, but I do not want to be anywhere near him. I am so happy with my current boyfriend. I don't understand how I fought for so long to keep this man. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My ex demanded child support for a child that is not mine. My mother and sister are on her side. Some years ago, I dated a girl. The relationship was bad. She was very controlling and abusive. It ended up really bad, and we broke up. I kept going on with my life, and after some years, I got a decent job, enough to solve all my needs, have a comfortable life, and make some savings. The thing is, a couple of months after getting my job, my ex contacted me. She first asked me to talk. I believe that she may want to reconnect or something, but she showed up with a 5-year-old child, claiming he was my son and demanding child support. I didn't believe her, but the child's age matched the time since we cut contact. I got advice from a lawyer, a friend of mine, to try to solve this out of court. I offered to take responsibility, pay all the costs, and be an active part of the kid's life, only after a DNA test. Everyone was okay with this except for my ex. She acted offended and demanded I just give her the money she deserved. She used all the excuses she could, even contacting my family to tell them I was trying to avoid taking responsibility for her child. When she ran out of excuses and the DNA test was finally made, surprise, I am not the father. She was so mad with the result and cried about the money, saying it was unfair and she deserved it, but she didn't accomplish anything. Moving on to last week, there was a little party at my parents' house. My brother, a friend, and I were talking, and my brother started to joke about the situation with my ex. My friend and I started to joke about it too. Some of our comments were a little dark and bad, but we were far away from the rest of the people. Literally, we were on the opposite side of the house and nobody else could hear us. At least that's what we thought. We were laughing like crazies when my sister appeared, very angry, and pushed me against the wall. She spied us and heard our conversation, and she was really mad. She started to yell at us about how horrible people we were for making fun of a poor woman. A few hours later, when the party ended, she asked me to go to the kitchen with our parents, and she started to say how awful I was for the previous situation. Apparently, my ex had been in contact with her, and she believed her version. That was her way to have an intervention. My brother and I were like, "Are you serious?" When she started to say how I forced my ex into being a single mother and that I have a moral obligation to help her. My dad only said that we maybe were being too cruel making jokes of her, but that I wasn't responsible for that kid. My mom then surprised all of us when she said, "Even if the kid is not yours, you are making more than enough money to support that child. You should have helped her." Since then, I had been receiving texts. My dad and my brother are on my side, saying I'm not responsible for her. But my sister is telling me how horrible I am for ruining their lives. My mom only said, "It's your decision, and I respect it. I'm just very disappointed that you ended up being so selfish. I am aware that she doesn't deserve my money, and I'm not planning to give her any, but the constant harassment of my sister trying to guilt me is just exhausting." Update 1. It's been a while after my last post. I read all the comments and decided to show them to my mother. We had to talk about the situation again. She started on my ex's side, but after reading the post and all the comments and opinions, she realized she was wrong. I think the thing that hurt her the most was all the doubts about if she cheated on my dad and I wasn't his son, and if that was the reason she was on her side. We had a very long conversation. She told me that she believed my ex because she was always so nice and kind with her, that she decided not to believe me when I told her all the things she did to me during the relationship because a good girl like her could never do something like that, so I must be lying. After that, she apologized to me. We are good now. On the other side, my sister, at first, decided that she wouldn't talk to me until I'll take responsibility, but after some days I talked with her, she is totally on her side, even after showing her everything. She said that none of that matters because a woman's word goes first, and that's all the proof anyone could need. Also, she said that even if you are not the biological father, you have an effective responsibility with her, so you must be man enough to take charge of them and start acting like a real man. She was a lost cause about my ex. I did some research and found out that shortly after we broke up, she started dating another guy, or maybe she was cheating on me with him before. I'm not sure. They broke up some weeks later, and she had multiple dates until she found out she was pregnant. I also found that she had been trying to find a father for her kid for the last 2 years, and I was the next on the list, but looks like she is desperate now because she was never that aggressive with any other one before. Now, the reason for this post. Some days ago, my ex and my sister came to my workplace. They made a big sign with my face that says, "He abandoned his child and irresponsible father," and started a drama, saying all their intention was to shame me and use social pressure to force me to take charge of them. They literally said it. To not make the story too long, they were taken out of the place. I got problems for that scandal. Even after showing all the proofs and legal documents that show they were lying, I was warned that this better never happen again, or I'll be fired. After that, I contacted my friend the lawyer, and we are now redacting a very long and detailed paper against them, my ex and my sister too. They went too far now. I'm going against them with everything. Maybe that scared them enough to leave me alone. Update 2. Hi everyone, and sorry for the lack of news. Last weeks have been crazy with a lot of stuff, but I think now is a good moment to update you all. First of all, I'm not allowed to talk a lot about the lawsuit. The most I can share with you is that my ex was extremely freaked out when she knew about it. She is now begging to drop it. She offered to take back everything she said, to never bother or even contact me again. She even tried to guilt me, saying that I would be ruining her and her son's life. But honestly, I don't care. I got tired of being the good guy a long time ago. She messed with me. Now I'm fighting back. And for my sister, the lawsuit at first only made her worse. As her attempt to shame me and my job didn't work as good as she wanted, she moved it to social media, spreading her BS about me abandoning my child or not taking responsibility, and exposing my legal actions like acts of censorship and massage. But at the end, that will be worse for her, not only because I can dismiss her defamation easily, but also is more evidence in our favor. Anyways, this is going to be a long road, and we are just beginning. Recently, we had a posada at my parents' home. Every year we use this excuse to make a big family party before Christmas. I had my doubts because I didn't want to be near my sister, but after some relatives assured me that she wouldn't be there, I decided to go. Big mistake. She was there. Mom decided that, despite everything that happened, I was taking all this too far, so she wanted all of us to meet to solve this problem as a family. I tried to get out of there the moment I realized what she intended, but some relatives tried to stop me while my mom cried that I needed to stop, that I was tearing apart the family and needed to learn to forgive and let go. I realized that, despite everything, even knowing I was telling the truth, she was still on my sister's side. I got out of there, saying to her that I'm not attending any family event again if she is there and to never think on trying this BS again. At this point, almost all my family knows what she did. Some of them think my sister is crazy. Some others think she is crazy, but I'm taking it too far. A couple of days ago, Mom invited me to spend Christmas with them. I didn't want to go after what she did, but I decided to give her a chance after she swore it wouldn't happen again. But not only had she planned to do it again, my brother warned me that this time she intended to lock me in until I forgive my sister and stop the nonsense. I called my mom and told her I knew and that I was done with her and my sister, to not talk to me until she realized she supported the wrong person and to apologize. I don't need to say how many times she tried to call me the following hours and all the drama she made when I didn't show up for Christmas. But again, I'm tired of being the good guy, so that's it for the moment. Hope you all had a nice Christmas, and I wish you a happy and drama-free New Year. Update 3. Hi to all that's still here. It's been a while, more than a year, and I think now is a good time to give an update about everything that happened with my life during the last year. Lots of things happened. Lots of things have changed. 1. The lawsuit. To be short, I won. We didn't get into trial. All got solved in conciliation meetings. My lawyer's strategy was to add all the things we could think of, from the harassment, the defamation, to the attempts to put my job at risk, parental fraud, everything. The idea was to scare the hell out of them, and if that didn't work, there would be lots of charges against my ex and my sister. My sister kept calling it a bluff and kept posting all her BS on social media. Something she regrets now, as every single word she posted against me came back to bite her ass when it was used as proof. My ex took back everything she said, a cheer for my forgiveness after seeing that she would lose a lot. So she ended up accepting to compensate the damages out of court and left my sister alone in a battle she started. When my sister realized how big things really were, that she was alone now and she will lose, she freaked out, deleted every single post she did, tries to pretend she never did what she did. But at that point we had all the backups, screenshots, and recordings we needed. On the last conciliation meeting, she broke down crying, begging me to forgive her and to not make her do this, but she did this to herself. She had multiple chances to stop, but she kept pushing and ended up facing the consequences of her own stupidity. She had to pay me a good amount plus all the legal costs. My mother helped her to pay it, but now she has a considerable debt, as my dad demanded her to pay them back over time. For a few months, she resented me for what I did, but we ended up talking and getting back on good terms. Our relationship is damaged but healing. She confessed she, at the beginning, felt she was fighting for a good reason, for a cause she believed to defend a poor woman in need. She believed she was doing the right thing, so she was sure she had to win. At the end, those ideas were supported by her friends, as she said those girls were encouraging her to fight, to face me and make me fulfill my obligations, that she was fighting in the name of other women, and those ideas kept on her mind until things got too real when she saw there was no way she would win. Then all those girls disappeared. My ex left her alone. All the ones who gave her support wished her luck and went away, so she had no other choice but to surrender. So that's how things ended with them. And for the ones who suspected, no, my sister and my ex weren't in a relationship. I don't know where my ex is, and I don't care. She paid and disappeared, and I hope to never see her again. Some people had told me I went too far with her. Even some called me a monster for ruining a single mother who already was in troubles, and some had said I'm not loyal to my family for taking this far the issue instead of solving it inside the family. At this point, I don't care anymore. To my mother. For the months the conciliation lasted, my mom went on my sister's side multiple times. She tried to convince me to stop, from asking me to just let it go, to trying to guilt me for everything she could think of. She even threatened me to disown me, to say she would not see me as a son anymore, to separate me from the family. But at the end she couldn't and was, and still is, resented for all those months. And after all was over, I kept asking myself why she does this. Why she just kept treating me like this, putting on everyone's side except mine. So, after reading multiple people saying to do this, I finally got to do 3, the DNA test. After talking about it with my brother and dad, all agreed it was too rare my mom acted like this, and because of everything my mom said and implied, my dad had more and more doubts to the point he was sure she did something. After some beers, a very hard talk, some tears, and the promise that no matter what the result says to me and my bro, he will always be our dad, we made the DNA test. Both of us are his sons. My dad was so relieved but then very embarrassed for having doubts of his wife's loyalty. He felt very ashamed, so we ended up all apologizing to her for what we did. As I started the talk of the DNA test, I asked to be the first one to talk and apologize to her. That night, all of us gathered at my dad's house. We sat around the table and I started by recognizing all the fights and tension we had over the months and apologizing for it because, after all, she is my mother. But her behavior made us all wonder and have lots of doubts about why she was being like this, so I suggested I'd go make a DNA test. Right after saying that, my mom went livid. Half a second later, her face went red. Got up from the chair and threw herself at me, pulling my hair, scratching and hitting me, screaming, "Why did you do this? I hate you. You had no right." My father and my brother separated her from me. She immediately started to ask for forgiveness to my dad. My dad was surprised and furious when he told her that I was about to apologize to her because the results said we were his sons. Her face was a mix of fear and desperation. Her reaction told us everything. I never saw my dad so angry. She confessed that long ago she had an affair for a long time until she got pregnant with me. She never knew if she got pregnant by my dad or by her lover, as they rarely used condoms, and she multiple times let him finish inside. All this year she had the doubt about who was my real father, and she pretended to take this secret to the grave, but now she exposed herself and now all made sense. That was the reason she always treated me like this. That's why she always put everyone else's word before mine. Dad threw her away that night, and in very little time all the family knew about it. We warned them in case she tried to set any lies. Something that she hated because she called us saying we had no right to set anything, that she is our mother, and we can't say anything against her. For the aftermath. So, to conclude this craziness, I won a good amount of money. My brother's still my best friend. My relationship with my sister is damaged but healing, and she's separated from her toxic and manipulative friends. My ex is gone, I hope forever this time. Dad is hurt. Mom revealed to be a cheater, but they're not divorcing. She is back at my dad's home, but he doesn't forgive her, and for what he said, he never will, but he doesn't want to go through a divorce or give her anything he had worked for. In his words, they're married but they're not a couple, and she now is trying to earn my dad's forgiveness. And, of course, my mom now openly hates me because, to her, I'm the cause of all her problems. In her words, if you had done what I said and took charge of the kid, none of this would have happened. I hope you're happy now, and that's it. Sorry for the text wall. Hope you all had a good 2023, and also wish you a good 2024. I will keep working, saving, and trying to build a life away from this madness. I'll probably cut contact with my mom, but I don't care at this point anymore. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video. 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 You in the next video.